What if Harry was raised by Madara Uchiha and awakened his Mangekyou Sharingan at age 8? A Harry Potter/Naruto crossover fanfiction Chapter 1. The hand that found him. England in 1986 was a country that did not know it was being watched. The man on the hill above Little Winging had been alive for 107 years, and he had been watching for most of them. He sat on the slope of a small public common, hands folded inside the sleeves of a dark coat, and he was so still that the wood pigeons forgot him and resumed their conversation about nothing. His name was Madara Uchiha, and he was tired of the world in the way that very old men are tired, not enough to put the world down, but enough to be done with its small ceremonies. He had outlived 4 of his own deaths. He had outlived empires that thought themselves permanent. He had outlived the village that bore his name and the brother that bore his face and the eyes that had once been his and were now somewhere inside him, doing slow work he could not see and did not entirely understand. For the better part of a century, he had been sitting in shadows like this one, listening. What he listened for was a particular tone in the world's noise, a frequency the body could not hear but the chakra could feel. He had cultivated a sense for it the way a fisherman cultivates a sense for which way the fish are running. It was not magic exactly, though magic and chakra were cousins. It was the resonance one bloodline makes when it meets another. He had been a child in a country at war, and he had learned then that the most useful thing in any war was the bloodline you did not know your enemy had. The frequency he heard tonight had been ringing for 3 days. He had followed it across the channel like a man following a struck tuning fork. It rang from a small house with hydrangeas in the front. The hydrangeas were brown at the edges. The house was painted the color of a man who has decided he does not want to be noticed by his neighbors and has, in the deciding, become exactly the kind of man neighbors notice. Number 4, Privet Drive. Madara had not slept properly since he had landed in Dover. He did not, on the whole, need to. He was sustained by a great many things that were not sleep: the eyes in his chest, the slow chakra of the planet, an old technique for borrowing minutes from one's own future. He was efficient with himself. He had to be. He listened to the house. He let his senses extend the way one extends a hand in the dark. There were 5 chakra signatures inside. 4 of them were the small, sour, civilian sort: a man, a woman, a child, and interestingly a dog the family did not know was theirs. The dog was a stinker terrier from the next street that had been sleeping in their shed for 2 weeks. The 5th signature was the boy. He was sleeping in a cupboard. Madara closed his eyes. Then he closed them again behind the first closing, the way an Uchiha closes his eyes when he is examining something with the part of himself that is not, strictly, eyes. The boy's chakra was not yet ordered. It was the chakra of a child who had not been taught what he was. It did not flow, it bunched, it surged when he dreamed. It went still when he heard his uncle's voice through the cupboard door. It carried faintly the wand signature of 2 adult mages, long dead, recently dead, but still leaving their fingerprints on the child's coils. It carried more faintly still the cold trace of something else, something that had been near the boy's forehead. Something that should not have been able to leave its trace and was, in any case, no longer wholly there. Madara opened his eyes. He stood up. He did not announce himself. He had given up announcements at the same time he had given up his second face. He walked down the slope. The street lamp at the end of Privet Drive flickered twice, the second flicker for him, the first for nothing, and he stepped inside the small ring of dark it made for him as a courtesy. And from there he walked the rest of the way along the pavement. The Dursleys, asleep behind their curtains, dreamed of 3 different things and one shared anxiety. The shared anxiety, Madara observed without effort, was the boy. He stopped at the front step. There were wards on the house. He could feel them, old blood magic, a woman's grief shaped into a perimeter, set down without quite enough understanding to be perfect. They were strong against intent. They were strong against an enemy. They were strong against, in particular, a particular enemy. They were not strong against a man who, at this precise moment, intended nothing at all. Madara emptied himself. It was an old discipline. It was older than the Sharingan. It was the discipline of choosing not to be a person for 30 seconds. He had killed Senju captains by being not a person at the right 30 seconds. He had walked past censors who had felt nothing more than a small breeze. He had once, when he was very young and stupid, walked past his brother this way, and his brother had been the only one who had ever noticed and had said only when Madara came back, "Don't do that again to me." He was not a person now. He set his palm on the door. The wards looked at him. He felt them looking. They were tired wards. They had been holding for 5 years against the wrong threats. He let them look as long as they needed to look, and when they decided that he was not the wrong threat, that he was not, in fact, a threat at all, since a threat requires a will and there was no will in him, they declined to interest themselves further. The lock made a small, polite click. The door opened, he stepped inside. The hall smelled of cooking fat and old floral spray. He could hear the husband's breathing upstairs, a wet, complacent snore, and the wife's lighter, neurotic. The boy he could not hear, but the boy's chakra was a small candle in the cupboard under the stairs. Madara knelt. He looked at the cupboard door. It had a latch on the outside. The latch was at adult hand height. There was a single hair from a small head caught between the wood and the door frame. Madara understood then what kind of work he was doing tonight. He had not been certain. He had come for the chakra. Chakra of this density in a 6-year-old was, in his experience, never accidental, never wasted, and always going somewhere. He had come to take it before it went somewhere else. He had not, until this moment, considered that he might also be taking the boy away from anyone. He looked at the latch. He looked at the hair. He noted them as evidence in the way a man notes the small details that, in a few hours' time, he will be very glad to have noted, because they will save him from being the kind of man who does not know why he did what he did. Then he opened the cupboard. The boy was a small shape inside it. He was not asleep. He was awake in the way children are awake when they have learned not to be awake noisily. He was looking at the ceiling of the cupboard, which was the underside of a stair, and he had been counting the splinters in the wood. He saw Madara. He did not scream. This, Madara thought, was the first interesting fact about the boy. The second was that the boy's chakra on seeing Madara did not retract. It did not surge in alarm. It went still. It went still the way a deer's body goes still in the long grass, not absence but readiness. He had been raised, this boy, in a house where the wrong reaction had consequences, and his nervous system had learned the trick of disappearing inside itself when an adult appeared. Boy, Madara said in English. His English was old. It had Edwardian gravel in it. He had practiced for 3 days on the boat. What is your name? Harry, the boy said. Harry what? Potter. Stand up. The boy did. He moved with the smallness of someone who has been told repeatedly that he is too big for the spaces he occupies. He was in pajamas that had been a cousin's pajamas first. Madara looked at him for a long moment. There was a scar on the forehead. Of course there was. He had felt the shape of it from the hillside. It was lightning-shaped, and it was, under his second sight, a tiny knot of foreign chakra sutured into the boy's own that the boy's body had spent 6 years politely refusing to expel. The boy did not know it was there. The boy's body knew. The boy's body had been quietly working around it the way a tree works around a nail. Madara, who had outlived 4 of his own deaths, recognized the trace. It was a soul fragment. He felt, for one of the very few times in his long century, surprised. In his country, soul fragments were the work of monks who had gone wrong. He had not known the practice existed here, in the Wand country. He had not known that anyone in this country still had the bad manners to attempt it. He revised in one quiet recalibration his entire estimate of what he was walking into. He followed the recalibration. He looked at the boy. Has anyone, he said, in this house ever hit you? The boy did not answer. Has anyone in this house ever hit you? Madara said again in the same voice. The voice was not warm. It was not cold either. It was the voice of a man asking the temperature of a kettle. Uncle Vernon, the boy said. He said it as if he were giving a fact about the weather. For what? For being a freak. And what is a freak? The boy thought about this. He thought about it longer than Madara had expected. It's when you do things that aren't normal, he said. Like making the glass at the zoo disappear, or making your teacher's wig blue, or your hair growing back fast. Madara said. He stood up. He looked briefly at the ceiling behind which the husband was snoring. He had not come tonight intending to harm anyone in this house. He had come for the chakra, and for the chakra he could have left these 3 Dursleys asleep and uncomprehending, and they would have woken in the morning to find the cupboard empty and would have decided, between the 3 of them and in their own internal silence, that this was a relief. He had now, however, learned things he had not come to learn, and while Madara Uchiha was many things, he was not anymore a man who pretended he had not learned a thing. Stand here, he said to Harry. Do not move. He went up the stairs. He did not creak them. He had not creaked a stair since 1903. In the master bedroom, Vernon and Petunia Dursley slept under a duvet patterned with small pink roses. Vernon snored like an engine in shallow water. Petunia's mouth was slightly open. There was a glass of water on the bedside table on Vernon's side with a denture floating in it. Madara stood at the foot of the bed. He had killed a great many men in his life. He had killed them in many different ways. He had not since 1908 killed a civilian, and he was not going to start tonight. He had given that up the same evening he had given up many other things. In a small wooden house in the mountains where he had decided, finally, that the rest of his life would be a discipline rather than an indulgence. But there was a discipline between killing and leaving alone. He activated his Sharingan. The Sharingan in his left eye was not the eye he had been born with. The eye he had been born with was somewhere else, and the eye in his left socket now had a long history and a complicated owner. The right eye was, on the whole, his. Both eyes were red. Both eyes had the pattern that in his country had once made men kneel. The Dursleys were not in his country, but the Sharingan Madara had learned over a century did not require a kneeling tradition to work. It required a nervous system. The Dursleys had nervous systems. He laid his attention on Vernon first. He went in through the man's optic nerve, through the closed eyelid, through the small, involuntary flutter of REM that was the man's only real openness to the world, and he set down in the man's amygdala 3 new facts. Fact 1. The boy in the cupboard had been a dream. Fact 2. The woman upstairs had had a sister. The sister had died. The sister had had no children. Fact 3. Anyone who tried to make Vernon Dursley remember the cupboard, the boy, the freak, or the woman's sister would not succeed. He repeated the operation in modified form on Petunia. With Petunia, he was more delicate. She had had a sister, and the sister had loved her unevenly, and the sister had had a child, and the child had been at the cupboard, and Petunia had been at the cupboard's other side, and Petunia had spent 6 years not looking at the cupboard, and the not looking had hollowed out a small grief-shaped hole inside her that she had filled very industriously with petunias. Madara closed the hole. He left her sister intact. He took out only the nephew. He took out only the cupboard. He left her petunias. He moved to the next room. Dudley Dursley was sleeping with his mouth open and one fat arm hanging off the bed. He smelled, faintly, of sherbet. Madara did less work on him. Children's memories were softer, less needed to be done. He took out the cousin. He left the rest. He went back downstairs. Harry was standing where he had been told to stand. He had not moved. He had, Madara noted, not even shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "Are you hungry?" Madara said. "Yes," said Harry. "We will eat on the way." He held out his hand. The boy looked at it. The boy was 6. He had been alone in a cupboard for 6 years. He had no reason to take the hand of a strange man in a dark coat who had appeared in his house at night. He was old enough, Madara noted with another small, surprised respect, to know this. But the boy had also been listening from the cupboard to the conversation in his uncle's snoring, and to the rearrangement of the household that had just occurred without his understanding, and to the way the wards on the house had stopped paying attention 5 minutes ago. He had been listening with the small, accurate organ that children are not supposed to have but always do, which is the organ that knows when an adult is, finally, not the same as the other adults. He took the hand. Madara turned. He led the boy through the front door. The door closed behind them with the same polite click it had opened with. In the bedroom upstairs, Vernon Dursley turned over and dreamed of his lawn. "Where are we going?" said Harry when they were past the hydrangeas. "To a mountain." "Is it far?" "Yes." "Are we walking?" "Number, how are we getting there?" Madara stopped under the second street lamp. He looked down at the boy. He had been, for the last 6 years of his very long life, considering the possibility that he would die without an apprentice. He had not minded the possibility. He had, in some moods, preferred it. He had outlived everyone he had ever cared for in his first country, and he had not wanted to risk doing it again in his second. He looked at the boy and decided to risk it. "By a way you do not yet know," he said. "Close your eyes. Do not open them until I tell you." The boy closed his eyes. Madara took him to Japan in the way he took himself to Japan, which was not a method that had a name in either of their languages. There was a brief sensation for the boy of being asked a very long question by a very wide darkness, and then the question ended, and there was air at a different temperature, and grass under his feet that smelled of pine instead of petrol, and a cold wind that came down off a mountain. "Open them," Madara said. The boy opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was a tree. The tree was older than the cupboard. The tree was older than the house with the hydrangeas. The tree was older than the country the house had been in. The second thing he saw was a wooden building behind the tree. The building had a tiled roof and paper screens, and there was a single lamp lit inside it, and the lamp had been lit by no one Harry could see. The third thing he saw was the man's eyes. They were red. "What are those?" he said. "Eyes," Madara said. "Yours will be like them in time. Come inside, we will eat." Harry, who was 6 and who had been hungry for most of his rememberable life, came inside. The door of the wooden house slid shut behind them. Outside on the mountain, the wind moved through the pines in the way wind moves through pines that have not been listened to by a child before. The tree by the door, which was older than the house, the country, and the man leaned very slightly toward the lamp. It was, Madara would later say, the first time the mountain had taken an interest in anything in 80 years. He did not say so to the boy. He fed him. It was rice. It was warm. There was a piece of fish next to it and a small bowl of soup with 2 pieces of seaweed floating in it like dark commas. There were chopsticks. Harry did not know how to use chopsticks. Madara did not show him. He let the boy work it out. The boy worked it out the way he had worked out latches, hot stoves, and which step of the stairs above his cupboard creaked, by paying attention. When the boy had finished, Madara took the bowl away. "Sleep," he said. "Tomorrow we begin." "Begin what?" said the boy. "Everything." He showed the boy to a small room with a futon and a quilt that smelled of cedar. The boy lay down. The quilt was heavier than any blanket he had ever had. He did not say so. He turned his face to the wall. He had not yet cried. This, Madara thought, watching from the door, was the third interesting fact about Harry Potter. He slid the screen shut. He went outside. He sat on the step. He let himself, for a moment, be tired in the very particular way a man is tired when he has, after a century of refusing to take a thing on, taken a thing on. He watched the moon over the pines. He thought briefly of his brother. He thought more briefly of the woman whose hydrangeas he had walked past. Then he stopped thinking because thinking was an indulgence, and he had given up indulgences in 1908. And he was, on this matter and every other, a man of his word. He sat on the step until the sun came up. Inside, the boy slept for the first time in his life in a room with no latch on the outside of the door. It was not a thing he was old enough to be grateful for. His body was grateful, though. The body keeps a tally, Madara knew. The body always keeps a tally. The mountain leaned very slightly toward the lamp. Far away in a small house in Surrey, a man named Vernon Dursley dreamed of his lawn, which was, in the dream, very large and very green and entirely empty of children. Chapter 2. The Mountain Year. The mountain did not have a name on any map. Madara had bought it from a man whose grandfather had owned it, and the grandfather had bought it from a temple, and the temple had received it in 1647 from a daimyo who had been frightened by something he had seen on its eastern slope and had wished to make the slope someone else's problem. The daimyo had not been wrong. The eastern slope still had a thing on it. The thing did not interest Madara. He had let it know in 1909 that he had moved in, and the thing had moved further up the mountain, and there had been no further negotiations. Harry learned all of this, eventually. He did not learn it the first morning. The first morning, Madara woke him with the bottom of a wooden bowl set down on the floor near his head. "Get up." Harry got up. "Put on these." He put on a small gray set of clothes that had not, the night before, been in the room. He did not ask where they had come from. He had been at the Dursleys long enough to know that asking where things came from in the houses of unfamiliar adults was a category error. Outside, the mountain at dawn was a thing that did not look real. The pines were black against a sky that was the color of the inside of a shell. There was frost on the grass. There were no birds yet. The lamp inside the house had gone out at some point in the night. Madara had not lit it. The lamp had decided on its own when it was done. "Run," Madara said. "Where to?" said Harry. "To the rock with the rope on it, then back." Harry looked. There was 300 meters down the slope a large gray rock with a length of straw rope tied around its middle. The rope was the kind one saw at shrines. "What if I fall?" "You will not." "What if I do?" Madara looked at him. "Then you will get up and run." Harry ran. He fell twice. He got up both times. By the time he got back, he was crying, but very quietly, in the way of a child who has been crying quietly for years and has gotten good at the volume. Madara made no remark on the crying. "Give him a bowl of rice and a piece of pickled radish. Eat." Then again. He ran it 11 times that morning. In the afternoon, Madara sat him on the step. "Listen," he said. "To what?" "To my voice." "All right. You have inside you a thing called chakra. Do not say the word out loud. Do not say it ever. Inside this house, between you and me, it is called the thing. Outside this house, in any other country, it does not exist. Do you understand?" "Yes." "What does not exist?" "The thing." "Good. Chakra is the union of two energies. One is physical, the body's energy. The other is spiritual, the mind's energy. Where they meet, they make a third energy, which is the energy that does work in the world. You have always had it. You have not always had it ordered. You have been leaking it. Tonight we begin to stop the leak." "Why was I leaking it?" "Because no one taught you to close the tap." "Will you teach me?" "Yes." "Why?" Madara considered this question. "Because I am old," he said, "and the leak interests me." He sat opposite the boy, cross-legged on the step. "Sit as I sit." Harry sat as he sat. He had short legs. The crossing was approximate. "Close your eyes." The boy closed them. "Feel the place behind your navel." "All right, there is a heat there. Find it." "I can't find it." Harry searched. He searched the way one searches for a coin in a sofa, with hands, then with patience, then with surrender. The third attempt was the one that worked. He found, somewhere just behind and below his stomach, a small ember. "Oh," he said, "you have found it. Do not be afraid of it." "I'm not." "That is good. The first time I had a student, he was afraid of it for a year. We will not waste a year. Now hold it. Do not feed it. Do not pull on it. Hold it." Harry held it. He held it for 1 minute. He held it for 5. By the 10th minute, he was sweating without moving, the way a child sweats when his nervous system is being asked for the first time to do a thing it has been built for since before he was born and has never been allowed to do. By the 15th minute, Madara said, "Open your eyes." The boy opened them. His eyes were green. Madara had expected and seen the green many times in the planning of this. He had also expected, faintly, a particular other color to be sitting underneath the green, the way oil sits under water. He saw the other color now, briefly, in the iris, a flicker of the deep red the Sharingan made when it was preparing to make itself. It went away. It was not yet time. You are tired? Yes, sleep, tomorrow we begin again. Harry slept. He dreamed of the rock with the rope on it. The rock told him in the dream that it had been there for a very long time and that it had not in all that time ever been spoken to by a small child before and that it found the experience to be tolerable. In the morning, Madara made him run to the rock again. This was the structure of the year. In the mornings he ran, in the afternoons he sat, in the evenings he ate, at night he slept. Once a week Madara took him into the small wooden room at the back of the house, the room with the screen painted with a heron, and made him stand against a paper target and threw small dull knives at the spaces around his head. Harry never moved. He had learned in the first such session that flinching made the next knife closer. He had learned in the second that flinching made it closer in a particular way, that the knives chose his flinches and grew toward them, and that the only protection from this was a stillness so complete that the knives had nothing to read. The knives sharpened him in a way the running could not. By the third month, his green eyes had a flicker in them all the time. It was not yet a Sharingan. It was a Sharingan in the way a small fish in a tide pool is a shark. By the 6th month, he had killed a goat. The goat had been a deliberate choice. Madara had not raised the goat. He had bought it from a man at the foot of the mountain. The man had been told that the goat was for a festival. The goat was, in fact, for the festival of Harry's 7th year. Madara did not believe in shielding a student from killing past the point at which the student was ready to kill. He believed in shielding a student from killing for exactly as long as it took to teach the student not to kill stupidly. Goat was the end of that lesson. He set Harry in front of the goat with a small wooden knife. The wooden knife had a blade that was not wood, but Harry had not yet been told what the blade was. Kill it, Madara said. Why? Because I have told you to. That's not a reason. Madara raised his eyebrow at this. It was the first time the boy had ever responded to an instruction with a counter. What reason would you accept? Harry thought about it. That we are going to eat it. We are going to eat it. Then I will. He killed the goat. He did it badly. The first cut did not go deep enough. He cried, this time loudly, while he made the second cut. The goat looked at him while he did it and did not understand what was happening, which was the worst part and which was the part that Madara had wanted him to understand. That, said Madara when the goat was done, is why we do not do it casually. Remember the goat, it looked at you. You owed it a single cut. You gave it two, do not give a thing two. Yes, what did you owe it? One cut. Why? Because it didn't know what was happening. Yes, now wash. Harry washed. That night, after the goat had been butchered and salted and eaten in pieces over the following week, Madara sat on the step opposite him. Tomorrow, he said, we begin the eyes. The eyes were the long work. The eyes, Madara explained, were a dojutsu, a bloodline ability that surfaced through the optic nerves. They were not properly a thing Harry could have. His bloodline was a different bloodline. His bloodline was the bloodline that produced wand users, and wand users were a different country. But Madara had spent, between his second death and his current condition, 11 years studying the wand user's inheritance, and he had concluded that the wand user's bloodline and the chakra user's bloodline had, at some point in the very deep past, a common ancestor. The ancestor had been a woman who had eaten a fruit. The fruit had given her children eyes and her grandchildren wands and her great-grandchildren feuds. Madara did not particularly care about the woman. He cared about the implication. The implication was that the eyes were latent in any sufficiently strong wand bloodline, the way a folded letter is latent in a sheet of paper. In Harry Potter's case, sufficiently strong was an understatement. The boy's coils were the densest Madara had felt in a child since he had felt his own brother's coils as a child. There was, additionally, the matter of the soul fragment. Madara had not removed the soul fragment. He could have. He had decided not to. He had decided that the soul fragment sitting in the boy's forehead was a useful pressure, a piece of grit around which a pearl could be made to grow. The grit was Voldemort's. The pearl would be Madara. He did not say this to the boy. He said instead, you have eye. Most people have eye. Most people use them to see what they expect to see. You will learn to use them to see what is there. I see what's there. Number, you see what your fear tells you is there. You see what your hunger tells you is there. You see at the moment a man telling you a thing and you see his words and not his hands. Look at my hands. Harry looked. Madara's left hand was by an inch lower than it had been a second ago. His right was by an inch higher. You did not see them move. Number, they moved while you were looking at my face. You believed you saw my hands because they had been there before. You did not look. You assumed. The Sharingan does not assume. The Sharingan looks. We are going this year to make you look. The lessons began. There were 4. The first was the lesson of the breath, which taught Harry to lengthen his attention. The second was the lesson of the candle, which taught him to narrow it. The third was the lesson of the river, which taught him to widen it again, but in a new shape. The fourth was the lesson of the goat. The fourth lesson did not have a goat in it. The fourth lesson was the memory of the goat set against an empty wall, and Harry was made to hold the memory until it stopped being a memory and became a thing in the room. He held it for an hour the first time. He held it for 3 hours by the end of the month. By the end of the second month, he could put the goat in the corner of the room and leave it there while he did other tasks, and the goat, when he came back, would still be there, and Madara, who looked into the room while passing, would occasionally nod at the goat as if it were a colleague. This was the foundation of the Tsukuyomi. Harry did not know that yet. He did know by the end of his 7th year, by the end of the first complete year on the mountain, that something was happening to his eyes. He looked one morning at the small mirror Madara had set up for him in the wash house, and the eyes looked back. There was in the green a fleck of red. The fleck was the shape of a single comma. "Tomo," Madara said behind him, "you're first. What does it do?" "Look at the lamp." Harry looked. The lamp resolved in his eye into 10,000 small components: the wick, the oil, the curl of smoke, the heat distortion above the chimney, the dust moving in the heat. He had not been told a single one of these was there. He saw all of them at once without effort. He looked away. He sat down. He put his hands on the wash-house floor. "It will be like that all the time," Madara said. "You will learn to turn it down. We will turn it down before it gives you headaches. Today, just look. Look at everything. Look until you are tired. We will not run today." Harry looked at everything. He looked at the lamp. He looked at his hands. He looked at the wood grain in the wash-house door, which he had passed 1,000 times and never seen. He looked at a spider in the corner, which had been laying an egg sack when he came in and was now sitting on the sack. And he saw the small movements of the sack, and he saw the small movements of the spider's mouth parts, and he understood for the first time what the spider's body was for. He cried a little. It was not the crying of the cupboard. It was a different crying. It was the crying of a body that has found, after 6 years of seeing only what its fear told it to see, what is actually there. Madara left him to it. In the spring of his 7th year, the second Tomo came in. In the autumn, the third. By the time Harry Potter turned 7.5, he had in both green eyes a complete 3 Tomo Sharingan and could turn it on or off with the same casual interior shrug with which other children clenched a fist. He could not yet do with it very much that was offensive. He could read movement. He could read intent. He could read the small involuntary tells in a man's face. He could read with growing accuracy the place a knife was going to be in 3/4 of a second. He could copy a hand seal he had seen once. He could, on a good day and with a great deal of concentration, hold the memory of the goat in the corner of the room and make the goat take a step. He could not yet do the rest. The rest, Madara told him, would require a particular event. What event? You will know when it happens. Will it be bad? Yes. How bad? Bad enough that afterward you will not need to ask whether it has happened. Will you do it to me? Madara did not answer. He poured tea. He set the cup down opposite Harry's. "Drink your tea, apprentice. We have a long year before us." Harry drank his tea. In the corner of the room, behind him, the memory of the goat was standing very still, as it had stood for almost a year, and looking, in the way memories look when they have been kept in a corner for a long time, less like a goat and more like a witness. This was, in fact, the 2nd year. The 2nd year was a year of preparation. In the 2nd year, the running became longer. The runs went into the upper slopes of the mountain, where the air was thinner, and where the eastern thing, the one the daimyo had been afraid of, could be heard sometimes on still nights moving above the tree line. Madara did not let Harry near it. He did teach Harry to feel for it, the way one teaches a child to feel for the edge of a hot stove. The boy's chakra sense by the middle of the year was good enough to map the entire mountain at rest, and the upper slopes of the mountain at need, and the lower slopes in detail. He could feel by the end of the year the small mouse in the wall of the wash house. He could feel, when he listened for it, the temple at the foot of the mountain. He could feel, when he listened hard, the village past the temple. He could feel, only when Madara held his shoulders and made him listen, the much fainter and stranger signature of the country he had been born in, far to the west, and Madara took his hand off the shoulders quickly when the boy reached that far, because the boy's chakra had, in reaching for it, briefly remembered the cupboard, and a thing in the boy's coils had stirred. Madara did not let it stir long. He had a use for the stir. He was saving it. The night of Harry's 8th birthday, after Harry had gone to sleep, Madara sat on the step and looked at the moon. The moon was, in the way of moons over mountains, larger than it had any right to be. It was the color of a very old coin. He spoke to no one and to himself. "It will be tomorrow," he said. He sat on the step until dawn. He did not sleep. The mountain did not sleep either. The tree by the door, which was older than the house, the country, and the man, leaned very slightly toward the lamp. The lamp went out. The lamp had decided on its own when it was done. Chapter 3. The controlled death. He waited until late in the morning. He gave the boy his rice. He gave him his pickled radish. He gave him his bowl of soup with 2 pieces of seaweed in it like dark commas, because rituals matter even when, perhaps especially when you are about to break one. "Today we go up the mountain," he said. "Which way?" East. Harry looked at him. He had been taught for a year and a half that east was the direction one did not go. East had the thing. East had the daimyo's problem. East was where the mountain leaned away from itself. Because the thing on the eastern slope has agreed to a service. What service? To do with you a thing it cannot do here. You will not be in danger from the thing. You will be in danger from the thing's permission. Understand? Number you will. Bring your blade, bring water, bring the small pouch with the salt. Do not bring your mind. I will need it empty for the work. Harry packed. He brought a small bone-handled knife the old man had given him in the spring, and the leather flask and the salt pouch and a folded square of paper that had written on it the seal Madara had taught him to draw with his own blood in the event he was lost. He did not bring his mind. He had been told not to bring it. He had not understood the instruction, but he had, in 18 months, learned to follow instructions whose understanding came later. They walked east. The trees on the eastern slope were older than the trees by the house. The bark of them had a different texture, rougher, more lichen, the lichen a shade of pale green that did not occur anywhere on the western slope. The wind on the eastern side was thinner. Sound did not travel the same way. Harry could hear faintly his own pulse in his ears because there was no other ambient sound to compete with it. They climbed for 3 hours. At the 3rd hour, they came to a clearing. The clearing had a stone in the middle of it. The stone was not the rock with the rope on it. Stone was an entirely different stone, older, blacker, the surface of it patterned with characters that were not Japanese and not Chinese and not anything Harry had ever been taught. The characters were arranged in a circle. The circle had a smaller circle inside it. The smaller circle had a single character at its center which Harry could read because Madara had taught him this character. The character was the character for simply here. Stand on it, Madara said. Harry stood on it. Now listen. I am going to tell you everything I am about to do. I am going to tell you because you will not at the end of it remember being told. And because a man who is about to be put through what I am about to put you through deserves at minimum to have had the chance to refuse. You understand? Yes, I am going to engineer the death of you. The boy did not move. This, Madara noted, with the small clinical respect he had cultivated in himself for the boy over 18 months, was the boy's response to most extreme statements. He did not flinch. He did not ask why. He waited for the rest of the sentence. Engineer, Madara said, is the precise word. I will not, in fact, kill you. The thing on this slope will not kill you. The blade in your hand will not kill you. The water will not kill you. The salt will not kill you. Nothing in this clearing will kill you. What will happen is that your body, for a calibrated number of seconds, will believe that the killing has happened. The belief will be total. The belief will be more total than a real death's belief. Do you know why? Because in a real death, the body has the cooperation of consciousness. The consciousness signs off. The death is in some small way, thing the dying person agrees to. In what we are doing today, the consciousness will not be permitted to sign off. The consciousness will scream. It will fight the death. The fighting is the point. The fighting is what will, at the moment of greatest resistance, open the eye. Which eye? You have 3 commas in each eye. There is another pattern beneath them. The pattern beneath them is older. It opens only under one condition. The condition is the death of the most loved thing in the world of the person whose eye it is. In my country, students who developed this eye most often developed it through the deaths of their brothers. There are other ways. There are not many other ways. I have, in the year and a half we have worked together, identified one other way that, for you, will suffice. What is it? The death of your parents. The boy did not move. Your parents are already dead. Yes, I was not there. Yes, I have never seen them. Yes, how can I lose what I have never had? Madara looked at him. I am going to give them to you, he said, and then I am going to take them from you. The giving will take perhaps 10 seconds. The taking will take, in the experience of your body, somewhat longer. In real time, it will be a single minute. The minute will be the worst minute of your life. The minute will be longer than the life that has been longer than the minute. Do you accept? The boy looked at him. What happens if I say number? We go back down the mountain. You finish your tea. Tomorrow we run again. You will not have the eye. You will be a chakra user with 3 commas and no further development, and that will be enough to make you in your one country the strongest of your generation. It will not be enough to keep you alive against the thing that in 5 years will come for you. You will die when it comes. The thing will not kill you cleanly. I know the thing. I have studied its current vessel. It is the thing that put the soul fragment in your forehead. There's a soul fragment in my forehead. Yes. You did not tell me number why, because you did not need to know until today. The boy thought about it. The wind on the eastern slope moved. I accept, the boy said. You are sure? Yes. Why? Because I would rather die today knowing what I was than die in 5 years not knowing. Madara did not reply. He took from the inside of his coat a single folded paper. He unfolded it. There were characters on it. There was also a single hair. The hair was red. The hair was very old. He set the paper down on the stone in front of the boy. Look at the hair, he said. The boy looked. It was your mother's. I obtained it 18 months ago. I did not tell you that either. It is all right. This will work because of the hair. The hair carries the truth of the woman it came from. When I put the death illusion on you, the illusion will not be a generic illusion. It will be the truth of her end. You will see what she saw. You will see what your father saw. You will see what they did in the last seconds. You will see the room. You will see the man who came in. You will see because the soul fragment in your forehead is a witness to the event from inside the eye of the witness. You will see it from the eye of your enemy. Your eye opening will fight your enemy's eye for the right to see. The fight is the trigger, do you understand? Yes, stand still. The boy stood still. Madara made a single hand seal. The clearing went for an instant the color of the inside of a bell. Harry was no longer in the clearing. He was in a house. The house had a hallway and a coat stand and a small pram in the hall. The pram was empty. There were boots by the door. The boots had been kicked off in a hurry by a tall man with messy black hair who was, at this moment, standing at the foot of the stairs with a wand in his hand looking at the front door. The man looked exactly like Harry except taller, except with hazel eyes instead of green. "James," said a woman from upstairs. "James, who is it?" The man did not answer. The man was looking at the door because the door had just changed color. It had been white, it was now, in the way a thing is in the moment before it stops being itself, no color at all. The door opened. What came in was a man in a long black robe with eyes that were red, but not the red of the Sharingan. The eyes were red because something had been done to them by someone who had not understood what they were doing. The eyes did not move with intelligence. They moved with appetite. The man at the foot of the stairs raised his wand. He had time to say one word. The word was Lily. He did not finish the word. There was a green light. The light was the color of the boy's eyes. The body of the tall man fell down. The man in the black robe stepped over the body. Man in the black robe walked up the stairs. The woman at the top of the stairs had red hair. She had the boy's mouth. She had the boy's nose. She had in her arms a child who was the boy when the boy was 1 year old. The child was looking at the door of the room with the alert, calm interest of a child who has not yet learned that doors can bring bad things. The woman put the child in the cot. "Not Harry," she said. "Please not Harry, take me, kill me instead." The man in the black robe laughed. Harry watched. He watched from inside the eyes of the man in the black robe. He could feel faintly the man's pleasure at the woman's begging, could feel the man savoring it the way a man savors a small dessert. He could feel the man's contempt. He could feel the man's curiosity. He could feel the man finally lift the wand. He could feel the green word, second person, present imperative, leave the wand. The woman fell down. The man in the black robe turned to the cot. The child in the cot looked up at the man. The child Harry could see with the eye of the witness, with a clarity that no human eye in that house had had at that moment. The child was in his last second of prehistory looking at the man with the small, calm, unafraid interest of a creature who has not yet learned what the world is. Then the green word was said again. Then the world was a color Harry did not have a name for. Then he was briefly the man in the black robe. Then he was briefly the soul of the man in the black robe. Then he was the part of the soul that had broken off. Then he was a small piece of darkness sitting in the forehead of a child in a cot. And the child was him and he was the child. And the soul piece was screaming at the discovery that it had not killed the child but had instead lodged in the child. And he could feel the soul piece's outrage and the soul piece's terror, and the soul piece's discovery that it had, by the act of failing to murder the child, made the child its prison. The minute lasted longer than the life that had been longer than the minute. He fought. He fought the way Madara had said he would fight. He fought the soul piece for the right to be the one looking out of his own eyes. He fought it for what felt to him like the second half of his 8th year. He won. At the moment of winning, the green of his eyes broke. The green broke into red. The 3 commas in each iris ran together. They reformed. They reformed into a pattern that was no longer a comma at all. It was a pinwheel. It was a 6-spoke thing made of 3 commas overlapping. It was the pattern that in Madara's country had once made men kneel. It was the Mangekyou. In Harry's left eye, the pinwheel had a particular shape, 3 curved blades, almost like a windmill against a sun. In his right eye, the pinwheel had a different shape, 3 sharper hooks set against a darker center. The eyes were not the same. Madara had not told him they would not be the same. They were not the same because the Mangekyou was a record of the cost. The cost on each side was a different cost. The left eye was the eye that had paid the cost of seeing his father die. The right eye was the eye that had paid the cost of seeing his mother. The two were not, in the deep accounting, the same loss. He came back into the clearing. He was on his hands and knees on the stone. Blood was coming out of his nose. Tears were coming out of his eyes, not from grief, though grief was there too. The tears were the body's tears at having been worked at a setting it had never been worked at. He was shaking. He could not feel his fingers. He could feel very clearly every leaf on every tree of the eastern slope. He could feel the thing on the slope. The thing was watching. The thing was in its alien way satisfied. It had done what had been asked. It had let the clearing be the kind of clearing in which the death illusion could be made total. It would now go back up the mountain and resume not being seen. Its part of the bargain was done. Madara was on one knee in front of him. "Look at me," Madara said. Harry looked. Madara's face did not move at what he saw, but his chakra did. "Both eyes," Madara said. "On the first attempt, I had expected one. It hurts." "Yes, will it always?" Number today it hurts because the eye is new. By the time you can use it without pain, you will have done the using many times. Stand up. Harry stood. He stood with help. Madara held his elbow. The man's grip was not gentle. It was in its way more respectful than gentle would have been. Look at the stone. Harry looked. The stone did under his new eyes a thing. There was a shimmer along its surface, a layered shimmer of every century the stone had been on the slope. He could see the rain that had fallen on it. He could see the snow. He could see the small lichens that had lived and died and lived again on it. He could see faintly the daimyo from 1647 standing on it for a single horrified second before he had decided on the spot that this slope was not his slope. You see time, Madara said. Not all of it, enough of it. The left eye will be your eye of fire, the right eye will be your eye of binding. The two together, when you have grown into them, will be your armor. Do not test the armor today, you are not strong enough today. What is the fire called? Amaterasu. What is the binding called? Tsukuyomi. What is the armor called? Susanoo. You will not see Susanoo for some years. We do not call him by his name lightly. He is a thing of the very deep work. All right, walk. They walked. He did not walk well. He walked the way a man walks the morning after a flogging. Madara did not help him beyond the first 100 meters. The boy's body had to learn by the descent what the new shape of itself was. Coddling would delay the lesson. Halfway down the slope, Harry stopped. I saw them, he said. Yes, I saw them die. Yes, he laughed. He did. Was it the same as the soul fragment? Yes. Is it still in my head? It is. Can I take it out? Not yet. We will. Not yet. Why not yet? Because if we take it out now, we lose its information. It is at the moment a small leashed enemy in your head. Leashed enemies are useful. They tell you by their tugging where the unleashed enemies are. We will leash it more thoroughly. We will in the end kill it, but not today. Harry nodded. He walked the rest of the way down without help. That night he ate. He ate the rice, the radish, the soup. He looked at the food while he ate. He looked at every grain of the rice. He looked at the way the radish had been cut. He looked at the soup's small movement of heat. He looked at his own hand holding the chopsticks. He looked at the chopstick wood. He had not before today known that wood had grain that could be read. He did not sleep. He sat in his room with his eyes open and watched the ceiling. The ceiling under the new eyes had a great deal in it. He turned the new eyes off after an hour because Madara had said the new eyes had to be turned off because they cost the body to use and he was tired. The cost was a small cost on this single use. Madara had explained, however, that the cost was cumulative. The cost was a cost on the eye itself. The eye used too much would eventually go. How much is too much? You will be told. You will not learn it by being told. You will learn it by being walked to the edge of it. We will not walk to the edge for some years. All right. The next morning, Madara woke him with the bottom of a wooden bowl set down on the floor near his head. Get up. All right. Run. All right. He ran better than he had ever run before. The new eyes told his feet where to go. The new eyes told his lungs how to use the thinness of the slope. The new eyes told his small heart how to work itself. He ran the slope 12 times. He came back. He sat. He listened. He heard for the first time the sound the mountain made when it was being heard by a child who could hear it properly. The mountain made, when it was heard properly, a sound that was the sound of a very large lung very slowly breathing. Harry sat on the step. It is breathing, he said, surprised. Yes. Is it alive? Yes. Has it always been? Yes. Did the old men know? Some of them did. The daimyo from the slope knew. He went home and did not tell anyone because he was a wise man, and the only year of his life he was a wise man. Has it eaten anyone? Madara looked at him. Eat your rice, apprentice. Harry ate his rice. The mountain breathed. He turned 8 in the autumn. He turned 9 in the next autumn. By the second autumn, he could put a single drop of black flame on a single leaf at 30 meters in the place where the leaf met the twig. He could not yet make the flame eat anything substantial. He could put it where he wanted it. The putting was the hard part. The eating, Madara said, came later. By the second autumn he could also, on a clear night, sit a man down in his own mind for what felt to the man like an hour and was, in real time, 3 seconds. He practiced on Madara. Madara was the only thing on the mountain that did not object. Madara, in fact, corrected him from inside the imprisonment, the way a music teacher corrects a student's posture mid-piece, and the corrections came with a clarity that no spoken instruction could have matched. By his 10th year, he could hold the Tsukuyomi for what felt like a day. He could not yet manifest the Susanoo. He could feel it. It was underneath his ribcage, a coiled shape the size of a sleeping cat asleep. He let it sleep. Madara had told him to let it sleep. He grew taller. He grew thinner in a wiry way that the cupboard had begun and the mountain had finished. He grew, in his new eyes, a different color. The Sharingan at rest sat under the green like oil under water. The green was still the dominant register, but anyone who looked at his eyes for more than 3 seconds saw in the 3rd second the red flicker and looked away. He did not look away. He had stopped looking away from things on the day the goat had died. On the morning of his 11th birthday, an owl flew into the wash house. Chapter 4: The Wand Country. The owl was confused. The owl had flown a very long way. The owl had been given an address in Surrey. The owl had been to Surrey. The owl had found in Surrey no Harry Potter. The owl had then been required, by the unbreakable instructions of the magic that powered it, to find Harry Potter wherever Harry Potter was. And so the owl had flown across the Channel and across Europe and across the Bosporus and across the steppes of Asia and across the Sea of Japan and up the side of an unnamed mountain and into a wash house where it had landed on the rim of a wooden basin and looked with the small, exhausted indignation of an owl who has just done 6 days of unscheduled overtime at the boy washing his face. The boy looked back. The owl held out its leg. The boy took the letter. He turned the letter over in his hand. The paper was the kind of paper one did not get in Madara's country. It was thick, slightly yellow, embossed on the back with a wax seal stamped with 4 animals, a lion, an eagle, a badger, a snake, arranged around a single letter H. He read the front. Mr. H. Potter, the wash house at the edge of the pines, the western slope. Madara. He showed it to Madara at breakfast. Madara took it. He looked at the address. The line under the wash house said the western slope, and the line under that said Madara, which was not a place that existed, except in the sense that Madara had at some point in the previous century registered the mountain under his own name with a regional official, and the official had filed it, and the filing had taken on a quiet life in a single rural ledger that the magic of the owl somehow had found. They have a finding charm on you, Madara said. It is strong. Stronger than I had expected. They have been looking for you for 5 years. Did they find me? They could not. The mountain is, for reasons we will not enter into, not findable. The charm found instead the closest legal name on a piece of paper. It got me, it used me to get to you. Is that a problem? It is a fact. He opened the letter, he read it, he did not show it to Harry, he read it again, then he folded it in half, then in quarters and handed it back. You are going to school. In England. In Scotland, yes. Why? Because it is the place where you will be tested in a way I cannot test you here. I do not want to go. That is not a question I asked. Harry looked at his rice. He had been on the mountain for 5 years. He had been the apprentice for 5 years. He had been in some real sense not a boy but a small careful instrument that Madara was sharpening. He had been told at intervals that there would come a moment when he would be sent down off the mountain to be used. He had not until this morning fully understood that the using would not be done by Madara. Will you come? For the procurement of the wand, yes. For the journey to the train, yes. After the train number, why not? Because I am dead. To the Wand Country in particular, I am dead. To make me visible to the Wand Country would be to make me a problem the Wand Country had to solve. I prefer to remain a thing the Wand Country does not know it has. Harry nodded. How will I tell you things? You will not. You will hold them in your eye. I will look at the eye when you come back. All right. That evening they sat opposite each other on the step. Madara had a small map of England on his knees. It was the first English map Harry had seen since he had been 6. We have 1 week before they will send a second owl, Madara said. We will use the week. Listen carefully. I am going to tell you who the people you will meet are, and what they will want from you, and what you will give them, and what you will not. All right. The headmaster of the school is named Albus Dumbledore. He is an old man. Not old in my sense, old in the sense of his country, which means he has been alive for 110 years. He is in his country the strongest wizard now living, with one exception. We will come to the exception. Dumbledore is in personal terms not unkind. He is also in strategic terms the man who arranged for you to be put in the cupboard. He did not put you in the cupboard with his own hand. He put you in the house knowing that the house would put you in the cupboard or in something like it. He did this for what he understood to be a strategic reason. I have no quarrel with the strategic reason. I have a quarrel with the cupboard. I will explain the quarrel when you are older. For now, Dumbledore is to be regarded as a clever man with a long plan whose long plan includes you. You are not to interfere with his plan in ways he can detect. You are also not to obey it. The threading of this needle will be your study. All right, the exception I mentioned. His name was Tom Riddle. In his country he is called Lord Voldemort. He is the man in the black robe. He is the man in the green word. He is also at the moment dead, or more precisely not dead. He attempted with his soul the technique I told you he attempted. He made, by my estimate, 7 such fragments. 1 is in your forehead. 1 was destroyed by accident the night your parents died, the original body. The other 5 are somewhere in his country. Your task over the next 7 years is to find them and to destroy them. My task is to keep you alive while you do it. Do you understand? Yes, you will be tempted in the first year to destroy him with your eye. You will not. You will allow him to come at you in the first year in his weakest form. You will let him be defeated by means his enemies can understand. You will, when no one is looking, do a thing of your own. Then you will let his enemies take the credit. Is this clear? Yes. Why is it clear? Because if they think I did it with my eye, they will ask questions about the eye. If they think it was something they understand, they will not ask. Good, continue. And because keeping the eye secret is the eye's first job. Yes, the eye's first job is to remain unknown. The eye that is known is half blind. Harry nodded. There is a boy you will meet on the train, Madara said. He is called Draco Malfoy. He's the son of a man who served Voldemort. He will, in his first conversation with you, attempt to enroll you in a network he does not fully understand. You will not refuse. You will not accept. You will be polite. You will hold his hand. You will look at his hand when you hold it. You will see in his hand what his father has done to him. You will not show that you have seen it. The Malfoy boy will be, when you have decided what to do with him, either an asset or a hostage or both. He cannot be an enemy. Do not let him be an enemy. Enemies of small people are expensive. All right, there is a girl you will meet. She is called Granger. She will, in her first conversation with you, attempt to correct your grammar. You will let her. She will, in the second conversation, attempt to lend you a book. You will accept the book. She is the only person of your generation in that country whose mind will, by the third year, exceed in raw processing the mind of any teacher who is teaching her. She is, in the long term, your most important friend. Do not be charming to her. She has had charm tried on her. She is impervious. Be useful to her. She is not impervious to use. All right, there is a boy you will meet. He is called Weasley. He is, in the short term, an enthusiast. In the medium term, a friend. In the long term, dependent on your handling, either a brother or a liability. You will choose. Do not choose by default. All right, the houses, there are 4. They will sort you into one of them. They will try, in your case, to sort you into the Lion House. The Lion House is where Dumbledore wants you. You will not go to the Lion House. You will not, in the same hand, go where Dumbledore wants you to go merely because he wants you not to want to go where he wants you to go. That is a trap I have seen old men set for clever boys. You will go to the Snake House because the Snake House is the house that will give you, in 7 years, the largest number of pieces of information you cannot get any other way. The Snake House is also the house from which Voldemort drew his followers. They are not your enemies. They are not your friends. They are, in particular, the source of the names you are looking for. The snakes will give you the fragments. We will use the snakes. We will then, when the work is done, return them to their families intact. Is this clear? Yes, good. We go to the Wand Alley tomorrow. The Wand Alley was reached by the same way they had reached the mountain, which is to say, by no method that had a name. Madara took his hand. Harry closed his eye. There was the long question of the wide darkness. There was the answer. There was, at the end of it, the smell of a particular kind of coal smoke and a particular kind of cobblestone and the sound of carts. He opened his eyes. He was standing in front of a pub. Above the pub was a sign with a cauldron on it. The sign was peeling. The pub was called the Leaky Cauldron. Walk behind me, Madara said. Do not look up. Do not until I tell you use the eye. Harry walked behind him. The Leaky Cauldron was, to Harry's senses, a riot. Every patron in the pub had a small low chakra and a wand signature, and the wand signatures interfered with each other like a room full of out-of-tune radios. He kept his eyes low. He did not turn the Sharingan on. He let his ordinary green eyes do what they were for. A man at the bar turned to look at them. The man was middle-aged. The man was wearing a turban. Harry's chakra, of its own accord, stopped. He had been taught in the second year that there were certain moments when the body's chakra reacted before the mind did. The body's chakra was an older instrument. The body's chakra had, by his 9th year, learned to interpret a particular kind of foreign signature in a particular way. The man in the turban had 2 chakras. One was small, frightened, weak, the chakra of a host. The other was older, malevolent, and the same signature as the soul fragment in Harry's forehead. Harry did not stop walking. He did not turn his head. He passed the man in the turban without breaking stride. He felt, as he passed, the soul fragment in his forehead respond to the other soul fragment in the man's turban. The 2 pieces of dark recognized each other the way 2 pieces of the same broken plate recognize each other. He continued walking. He did not in the moment turn his Sharingan on. He had been instructed. Madara ahead of him did not turn his head either, but said very softly in a Japanese the patrons could not have understood even if they had heard it. I felt it. Voldemort, said Harry in the same language. Yes, a piece of him, in the larger man. The larger man is a school staff member. Should I do it now? Number, we have come for the wand. We will take the wand. We will let the piece in the turban believe it has not been seen. We will go back to the mountain. We will choose the moment. All right, they walked through the pub. In the back of the pub, Madara tapped the bricks of a wall with his bare hand, in a pattern he had not been taught but had read from another wand user's mind 10 years before, and the bricks opened, and Diagon Alley spread itself out in front of them. Harry, for the first time in 5 years, was in a crowd. He did not have a public face. He did not need one. He had been taught patiently over 5 years how to walk through a crowd without being seen. He walked through Diagon Alley behind Madara as one walks through a market that has decided you are not worth noticing. They went to the wand shop. The wand shop was a narrow building with the words OLLIVNDRS, makers of fine wands since 382 BC over the door. Inside, the light was the color of an old book. There was a man. The man's eyes were silver. The man's chakra was the highest civilian chakra Harry had felt in the alley by an order of magnitude. The man's chakra had woven through it the chakra signatures of, by Harry's quick count, 11,004 wands. The man, in some real sense, was every wand he had ever made. "Mr. Potter," said the man before Harry had said his name, "I have been wondering when I would see you." "You have been wondering for 5 years," Harry said. The man's silver eyes paused on him. "You are not what I expected. Number, you are accompanied." Yes, the silver eyes moved briefly to Madara. They held him for a moment. They had in that moment the quality of a man who has just opened a door and is not sure whether he is looking at a customer or a draft. Madara looked back. The silver eyes looked away first. "Yes," said Mr. Ollivander. "Yes, well, we shall begin." He began. He brought out wand after wand. Harry, under instruction, did not turn the Sharingan on. He did not need to. He let his ordinary chakra reach for each wand. The wands did the rest. The first wand was warm. The second was warmer. The third was cold. The fourth set fire briefly to a small stack of paper on the counter. Mr. Ollivander put it out without looking up. The 14th wand was the wand. It was a long, slim, very dark thing. The wood looked in Harry's eye like the inside of a piece of charcoal that had been polished until it became a different substance. "Ebony," said Mr. Ollivander before Harry had touched it. "Dragon heartstring, 13 inches, unyielding, a wand of conviction. A wand for those who hold to their beliefs against all comers. It will not be, I should warn, a pleasant wand for those who try to take it from you." He set it in Harry's hand. The wand in Harry's hand did a thing. It did not make sparks. It did not throw light. It did instead settle the way a tool settles in the hand of a person who has been using tools of that family his entire life, even when he has not been holding that specific tool. Harry felt faintly a small click somewhere in his coils, the click of a circuit closing. Mr. Ollivander looked at the wand. He looked at Harry. He looked at Madara. He looked at the wand again. "That is," he said, "an interesting outcome." "Why?" said Harry. "Because that wand has been in my shop since 1672. It has refused, in 3 centuries, every hand that has tried to claim it. I have, in the last 40 years, ceased to offer it. It has, I think, been waiting for an unyielding hand. I had begun to suspect such a hand would not come in my lifetime." "It has come," said Madara. Mr. Ollivander looked at Madara. "Yes," he said, "it has. I should be glad of the witnessing if I were the sort of man who is glad. We will say 7 galleons. Madara paid. Madara had galleons. Harry did not at that point ask where the galleons had come from. He would learn later that Madara had a quiet account in a bank in Liechtenstein that had been quiet for, by then, 91 years. They left the shop. They walked the rest of the alley quickly. Robes, books, cauldron. A small, dark ironwood box that Madara purchased from a back shop with no sign, and that Harry was not at that point told the use of. An owl, a small, neat white owl whom Harry named on the spot Hedwig, because the bird looked at him in a way that suggested she already had a name and would accept his calling her by a different one without comment. They returned to the mountain. Madara made him pack a single bag. "You will in your trunk take the books, the robe, the cauldron, the wand. You will in your skin take the eye. You will in your blood take the seal I taught you. You will in your head take the names. You're killed in your country, you will be returned to the mountain by the seal. Do not be killed, the returning is undignified. All right, the eye is yours, do not lend it, do not show it, do not use it where it can be photographed. 1 cameras are stupid, they are also numerous. You will, by Christmas, see why I have given you this caution. All right, the Sharingan goes on for 1 second at a time in the first month. 1 we will increase by my mail, do not be tempted. All right, last." He took Harry's chin in his hand. He looked into his eyes. He held them, his red into the boy's green overred, for a long moment. "You will live," he said, "until I tell you to die. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Repeat it." "I will live until you tell me to die." "Good." He let go. He turned. He walked into the wash house. He did not look back. Harry watched the door close. Then he picked up his trunk, took Hedwig under his arm, and walked down the slope for the last time as a child to the path that would take him to the train. The platform at King's Cross was loud. The platform at King's Cross had not, in Harry's 9 years of life since the cupboard, been the loudest place he had ever been. The mountain had louder things on it, the eastern thing, the wind in the pines at the equinox, the breathing of the mountain itself when one had the new eyes on. The platform was loud in a particular civilian English way that he found, after the mountain, more like clutter than noise. He found the train. He found on the train an empty compartment. He sat down. He took from his pocket a small folded piece of paper. He unfolded it. It was a list in Madara's hand of 17 names. Tom Riddle, Albus Dumbledore, Lucius Malfoy, Draco Malfoy, Severus Snape, Quirinus Quirrell, Sirius Black, Peter Pettigrew, Remus Lupin. Bellatrix Lestrange, Barty Crouch the Elder, Barty Crouch the Younger, Hermione Granger, Ronald Weasley, Cedric Diggory, Luna Lovegood, Nymphadora Tonks. Some of the names had small marks beside them, some had no marks. The marks meant different things and had been explained the night before. Tom Riddle had a small circle, Quirinius Quirrell had a small circle and an arrow. Peter Pettigrew had 2 small circles. Sirius Black had a single line through and an instruction in tiny handwriting beneath, extract. Harry folded the paper. He put it back in his pocket. He looked out the window. The train began to move. He did not for the first hour turn the Sharingan on. He let himself for the first hour be a boy on a train. It was the last hour of his life that he was a boy on a train. He spent the rest of the journey not being a boy on a train. The boy named Draco Malfoy slid open the compartment door, with 2 large quiet children behind him, and offered him his hand. Harry held it. He looked at the hand. He saw in the hand what the father had done. The father had Harry saw in the 3rd Tomo's small reading of the bone, in the way the small bones of the wrist had been recalibrated by old breaks, but not entirely gentle to the boy. The boy did not yet know that the breaks had been not gentle. The boy thought the breaks had been education. Harry shook the hand. He shook it with the right pressure. He did not show what he had seen. Draco Malfoy, the boy said, "I'm glad to meet you, Potter." Harry. "Sit down, please, there's room. Who are your friends?" The friends were named Crabbe and Goyle. The girl named Granger an hour later opened the compartment door without knocking and corrected Draco's grammar inside of 40 seconds, and Harry let her, and accepted the lent book she pressed on him on the way out, and in his head a small line was put through one of the names on the list and another beside it. The boy named Weasley did not in the end come to the compartment that journey. He had been turned away by Draco's friends at the door. Harry made a note. He would correct the missing introduction later. When the train arrived, the boats took the first years across the lake. The boats were a small folly. Harry could have walked across the lake on his chakra and saved everyone time. He sat in the boat. He had been told to sit in the boat. He looked at the lake. The lake had beneath it a number of large, slow signatures. He did not look at them too closely. He had been told also not to alarm the lake. The hall of the school was large and full of small noises. The hat that sang the sorting song looked at him for a long time. "Difficult," said the hat in his head. "Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind. Talent, oh my goodness, yes, and a thirst to prove yourself. Now that's interesting. So where shall I put you?" He did not answer the hat. He did not have to. He had been told what the hat would say and what the hat needed not to be permitted to say. "You have been," he thought to the hat in clean Japanese, "instructed already. You will say my name in the house and you will not in your saying comment on the I. Is this clear?" The hat was for the first time in 1,000 years silent. "Slytherin," it said after the silence. It said it without song. The Slytherin table clapped. The Gryffindor table did not. The headmaster at the high table looked across at him. Harry, very politely, did not look back. He turned his ordinary green eyes down to his plate, which had not yet appeared, and waited for the food. The food appeared. He ate slowly like a man eating his first English meal in 5 years, which he was. Down the hall at the high table, a man in a turban turned his head very slightly toward Harry. The man in the turban felt, for the first time, the soul fragment in Harry's forehead respond to the soul fragment in his own. The 2 pieces of dark again recognized each other. Quirrell, in his small private interior, felt his master stir. Voldemort, in Quirrell's turban, said very quietly in Quirrell's ear. The boy, Quirrell sweated. Harry did not look up. He ate. He listened. He kept his Sharingan in its sheath. Months passed. The school was a school. The school was by the 2nd week easy. Harry had been taught by Madara the underlying mechanics of every one class he was put into. Charms was small focused chakra. Transfiguration was small reshaping of latent material. Potions was, in Madara's contemptuous description, applied chemistry plus suggestion. Harry was excellent at all of it. He was excellent in the way of a craftsman in a class of hobbyists. He learned to disguise his excellence at a level just above competent. He missed exactly the right percentage of questions. He moved through the snake house carefully. He did not befriend Draco. He made Draco feel befriended. He did not flatter Snape. He made Snape feel correctly assessed. He sat next to Granger in 2 classes. She organized him. She did not, he noted, particularly like him. She did, he noted, increasingly respect him. He sat next to Weasley once by accident. The accident was instructive. The boy was, as Madara had said, an enthusiast. Harry made a small mental note to convert the enthusiasm to use. The man in the turban was the work. By Halloween, Harry had identified the layout of the 3rd floor corridor, the protections on the stone, the structure of the obstacle course, and the fact that Quirrell was the one trying to get past it. He did not tell Dumbledore. He did not tell anyone. He waited. He waited in particular for the moment when Quirrell would, in his desperation, accelerate. The moment came in June. The moment came at the foot of the mirror. He had been told by a senior student bribed with 3 weeks of laundry help and the discreet healing of a sprained shoulder the location and the structure of the mirror. He had walked through the obstacles in his ordinary green eyes. The dog had been put to sleep by an instrument Madara had given him that was not a flute. The plants had been frozen by a small wind dojutsu disguised as a charm. The chest had been bypassed entirely by a route Madara had shown him on a map of the floor that by every wizard's testimony did not exist. He came into the chamber of the mirror. Quirrell was there. The turban had been removed. The face on the back of the head was Voldemort. The face was in person more pitiable than Harry had been led to expect. It was a small, hairless, eyeless, raw thing. It was the face of a man who had unmade himself by degrees and had not at any of the degrees looked in a mirror. It saw him. It rasped at him. Potter at last. Harry stopped. 6 meters from them, he looked briefly at Quirrell. Quirrell looked back. Quirrell's small, frightened civilian chakra was almost entirely gone now. It had been eaten over the school year by the larger thing in his turban. There was almost nothing left of Quirrell. There was no host to protect. Harry took in his interior accounting the small ethical fact and set it down. He did not turn the Sharingan on. He did not need to. He had practiced this in his head in the 3rd Tomo all year. He had done the rehearsals against the memory of the man in the black robe. He had done them at the wash house on the eastern slope, in the bath, in his bunk, in the quiet of the dungeon dormitory at night. He took a breath. He closed his ordinary green eyes for 1/2 second. He opened them. The Mangekyou was on. It was on for the first time outside the mountain. It was on also for the first time outside Madara's supervision. It was on for the first time on an enemy who did not know it existed. He looked at Quirrell's body. He selected in his interior accounting the point at which the body would burn. He selected Quirrell's heart. He thought on the back of his left iris the word Amaterasu. The black flame appeared on Quirrell's chest. It did not consume the chest the way fire consumes wood. It consumed it the way time consumes a name on a tombstone, quickly, but with intent, working at every level of the material. Quirrell did not have time to scream. Quirrell's small civilian chakra blew out like a candle. There was a smell briefly that was not the smell of any fire Hogwarts had ever housed. There was a wash of heat, but the heat did not move outward. It moved inward. Amaterasu was a fire that ate its target and did not feed the room. In 5 seconds, Quirrell was gone. There was on the floor a small dark patch of nothing. There was in the air above the patch a wraith. The wraith was Voldemort. The wraith had not had a moment to dive into Harry the way it had been planning to. It had been ejected by the death of its host and was in this instant in the open in the air without a body. Harry looked at it. He did not say, "You took my parents." He did not say, "You laughed." He did not say anything at all out loud. He thought on the back of his right iris the other word, Tsukiyomi. The wraith stopped. For a wraith, stopping is not a small thing. A wraith is a thing that, by definition, does not stop. A wraith is the running of a soul away from itself. This wraith, however, had been caught by an eye that operated briefly and locally on a different clock. In the 700ths of a second of real time that had now passed, Harry put the wraith, inside its own remaining mind, into a small white room with no door. He held it there. He held it there for what felt to the wraith like a week. He did not in the week harm it. He did not in the week speak to it. He let the wraith, who had not in all its decades had a week alone with its own thoughts, sit with its own thoughts. He sat opposite it in the room of its mind in the form of a small calm boy in a school robe. The wraith, after the 3rd day, began to scream. The screaming was, by the 7th day, very specific. Harry took notes. The notes were not on paper. The notes were on the back of his right iris. At the end of the week, in the 700th of a second, he let the wraith go. It fled. It fled through the wall of the chamber, through the school, through the lock, into the air, into the east, toward the woods where it would huddle for years in a small forgotten clearing possessing snakes. Harry watched it go. He closed both eyes. He sat down on the floor. He sat there for a long time. When the teachers came, Dumbledore at the front, McGonagall behind, Snape behind her, Quirrell's small absence on the floor between them, they found him sitting cross-legged in front of the mirror with his hands on his knees, and they thought, because they did not know how to look at an apprentice, that he had simply in the way of a brave 11-year-old boy been overcome. He let them think it. He had been told by Madara to let them think it. He sat very still. He did not, for the rest of the year, look up. In the headmaster's office 3 days later, Albus Dumbledore looked at Harry over a pair of half-moon spectacles and said, "It is well done, Harry. It is, perhaps, too well done. Tell me, how did you know what to do?" Harry looked at his shoes. "I just did, sir." The half-moon spectacles regarded him. "Yes," said Dumbledore, "I see." He did not see. That was the first lesson of the year. The headmaster did not see. Harry had been told he would not. He had now confirmed it. On the mountain 3 days later, Madara, reading the eye record in Harry's eye while the boy sat on the step with his rice in his lap, made a small, low sound in his throat. It was the closest sound to approval he had ever made. "Acceptable," he said. "Continue." Chapter 5, The Diary and the Dog. The summer between first and second year was 3 weeks at the mountain, and the rest in a small flat in central London that Madara had purchased in 1923 and not lived in since. Madara did not come to the flat. Harry came to it. He came to it because it was easier in operational terms to be in London for the 7 names on his list than to be on the mountain. The flat was on a side street near Russell Square. The flat smelled of teak and old paper. The flat had on the bookshelf a complete collection of works on the Statute of Secrecy in the original 1692 form, annotated in a hand Harry recognized by the third book as Madara's. He did 3 things in the summer. He read the books. He went to Diagon Alley twice. He bought nothing on the first trip. He bought 5 things on the second. He sat on the floor of the flat in front of a small candle, and he turned the Sharingan on for a full 10 seconds at a time 20 times in a row, and felt the small accumulating cost in the back of his skull. And he learned to read that cost and to budget for it. He returned to the train on the 1st of September. He found on the platform a small commotion. The commotion was a red-haired family. The commotion was loud. The commotion involved a small girl of about 10, a year too young for school, and an older brother who by Harry's third Tomo reading was the one named Ronald, and a smaller, sharper, anxious mother who was running the entire family on the chakra equivalent of a wound-up alarm clock. The girl was the work. The girl had in her arms a leather-bound diary. The diary to Harry's eye was the same signature he had felt in his own forehead and in Quirrell's turban. He filed the diary. He boarded the train. He found an empty compartment. He let in the second hour Ronald Weasley find him in it by leaving the door cracked just the right amount. "Hi," said Ronald. "Is, anyone in here?" "You are," said Harry. Ronald sat down. It is a curious thing, the use of a friend. Harry in his second year did not have many friends. He had assets, hostages, and 1 set of green eyes. The use of a friend, as Madara had explained, was that a friend was a person who did not, in the strict accounting, need to be either. A friend was someone you spent on. A friend also was a person whose mere proximity made the operations of the snake house cheaper, because a snake who had a friend in the lion house was, by virtue of the friend, harder to identify as a snake. He let Ronald talk for an hour. He listened. He learned in the hour where the diary had come from, pushed into the girl's cauldron in the alley by a man with a cane, name not mentioned but inferable. He filed it. The school year began. The Chamber of Secrets did not at any point surprise him. He had read in the summer the actual historical account of Salazar Slytherin's chamber in a particular private volume Madara had marked. He knew where the entrance was, the second-floor bathroom, the sink with the snake. He knew what was in the chamber, a basilisk, ancient, trained by Slytherin and retrained more recently by a memory of Tom Riddle. He knew by November that the diary was hosting the memory and that the memory was using the small Weasley girl as its medium. He had not yet decided what to do. The strategic problem was that he could not simply, in the first week, walk into the bathroom and Amaterasu the snake. The snake's death would be felt. The chamber's opening would be visible. The teachers, particularly Dumbledore, would investigate. Dumbledore was not, in the long run, to be left with the impression that an 11-year-old in the snake house had killed a basilisk by means he did not understand. The strategic solution was patience. He let the snake do, in the early months, what the snake was going to do. He arranged, with very small interventions, for the snake's victims to be petrified rather than killed. He did this by, on 3 occasions, manipulating with a slow Sharingan genjutsu cast at long range, the timing of the encounters, making the snake's victims see the snake first through some intervening surface, water or glass, so that the killing gaze was deflected. He saved Mrs. Norris by misdirecting Filch by 20 seconds. He saved Colin Creevey by, on the morning of the attack, intercepting the boy in the corridor and asking him to take a picture of a tapestry, the tapestry being on the second floor and the photograph being taken through the camera lens, which deflected the gaze on the small boy's first glimpse of the snake. He saved by similar contrivances Justin and Penelope and the small Hufflepuff ghost who had not properly been savable but had been worth the courtesy of trying. He did not save the cat girl, Mrs. Granger's friend's cousin, who was not on his list of saves because she had not, at any point, been in a story. The girl, Ginny, was the one he was not entirely sure of, and the one Madara had told him to take the most care over. She is, Madara had said in his summer briefing, the diary's tongue. She is also the diary's body. She is also in her own right a child. The challenge with diaries of this kind is that the destruction of the diary, while the diary is in the hand of the medium, may be done in a way that costs the medium a percentage of her own coil. You will arrange the destruction so that the cost is borne by the diary alone. You will, in the doing, leave the girl uninjured. You will then return her to her family with the impression that she has been rescued, and you will not in the rescuing take credit. The credit will be given at our convenience to whoever needs the credit most. Who needs the credit most? Ronald is a friend. Yes, Ronald is a friend who is poor. Ronald is a friend who will in 3 years be tempted by money. The money will come by then from a particular source. We will, by giving him credit now, inoculate him. How? By making him, in his own internal accounting, a hero. Heroes resist bribes more reliably than non-heroes. Resistance is, in this matter, our concern. All right, he arranged it. He arranged it for the night of June the 8th. He arranged it by allowing himself to be present by accident in the small Weasley girl's path as she walked sleepwalkingly toward the bathroom for the last time. He arranged for Ronald to be with him. He arranged for a third party, the boy Lockhart, to be there as well, because Lockhart was a useful theatrical decoy, and because Lockhart's memory charm habit would, by the night's end, conveniently fail on himself and remove him from the relevant testimony. They went down into the chamber. The chamber was as he had read it. Long, green, wet, the statues of snakes lining the wall, the head of Slytherin at the end. The Weasley girl was at the foot of the head. The diary was open on the floor beside her. The memory of Tom Riddle was standing over her, half-formed, a young, handsome, gaunt boy in a school uniform from the 1940s. The basilisk had not yet been summoned. Lockhart on cue did his memory charm. He used Ronald's wand. The wand, faulty by Harry's discreet manipulation of its rune circuitry over the last hour, backfired. Lockhart went down. The roof fell in a small managed collapse between Ronald and the chamber. This left Harry alone in the chamber with the memory of Tom Riddle and the body of the small girl. The memory of Tom Riddle, for one full second, looked at Harry the way a man looks at a thing he has not been told about. The memory could see Harry's chakra. The memory was made of soul, and the soul recognition between Harry's forehead and Tom Riddle's diary was, for that 1 second, mutual. "What are you?" said the memory. Harry did not answer. He looked at the diary. He looked at the diary with his Mangekyou, and he saw in the diary the structure of a soul-fragment binding, the same structure he had seen in his own forehead, but bound to leather and ink rather than to bone. He saw, on the back of his left iris, the seam. He thought the word, Amaterasu. The black flame appeared on the diary. The diary did not survive the flame. The diary's flame was not the same as Quirrell's flame had been. The diary was an object, not a host, and so the flame did not need to be tuned to the eject of a soul. The flame ate the leather, the ink, the binding, the soul fragment, the small enchantment that bound the soul fragment to the leather, and the small enchantment that bound the soul fragment to Ginny Weasley's chakra coils. The black flame did not touch Ginny. Harry had selected on the back of his iris the precise material the flame would consume. The memory of Tom Riddle dissolved. It dissolved like a photograph in water. The basilisk woke up. The basilisk woke up because the chamber's bound enchantment had been disturbed. The basilisk was, by the first second of its waking, already coming up the throat of the statue. Harry closed his eyes. He closed them because the basilisk's gaze, even through the Sharingan, was a problem he had not yet decided whether to take the time to solve. He listened with the chakra sense. The basilisk was a single large signature sliding up the inside of the statue. The basilisk had a temperature. The temperature was warmer than the statue. The temperature gradient told him exactly where the head of the basilisk was, second by second. He drew his wand. He did not for this need the wand. He used the wand because in the aftermath a wand explanation would be required. He used the wand for the cover. He waited until the head emerged from the statue. He thought without opening his eyes the word Amaterasu. The black flame appeared on the basilisk's head. The basilisk was an ancient construct of magic, and so the flame had to work harder than it had on Quirrell and harder than it had on the diary. The flame, however, worked. It ate down the spine of the basilisk over a course of 2 seconds. The snake screamed. The scream of a basilisk is not, in the precise scientific sense, a sound. It is a thing that the room does on the basilisk's behalf. The room of the chamber did the scream. The water rippled. The statues shifted. The torches went out. The basilisk fell. It fell across the floor of the chamber in a long dead loop. The body had not yet stopped twitching when the flame, having eaten the head, dissolved. Harry opened his eye. He walked across the chamber. He took from the corpse of the basilisk a single fang broken cleanly from the jaw. The fang would be needed for the cover. The fang was, in Madara's planning, the explanation. He would tell the teachers that the diary had been stabbed with the fang. The teachers, who had no concept of Amaterasu, would accept the fang. They would, in fact, prefer the fang because the fang was a story that fit in their books. He set the fang in the ashes of the diary. He picked up the small Weasley girl. She was unconscious. She was not, by his Mangekyou reading, harmed. He carried her back through the chamber, through the collapsed wall, a small earth jutsu disguised as a reducto, and up the long pipe. In the bathroom, he sat the girl down on the tile. He looked at Ronald. "You did it," he said. "What? The diary, the girl, you did it." What? I didn't. You used the fang. You stabbed the diary. The diary stopped. The girl woke up. "You did it." Ronald looked at his hands. Ronald looked in his own internal accounting, which Harry could read with the third tom like an instruction sheet for an objection. Ronald could not find one. Ronald was in his secret self 12 years old. Ronald had in the last 6 months watched his small sister taken from him by a thing he could not understand. Ronald was, by the second of 3 crucial seconds in this story, prepared to accept that he had been the one who had saved her. The acceptance was completed by the 3rd second. The 3rd second was the entrance of Ginny Weasley into wakefulness with a small choking sob, looking up at her brother first. Ronald hugged her. Ronald cried. Harry let him. The teachers came. The teachers were given the fang. The teachers were given a story that involved a fang, a brother, a sister, and a stack of brave Gryffindor decision-making. The teachers, who were already inclined to believe stories of brave Gryffindor decision-making, accepted the story without revision. Dumbledore looked briefly at Harry. Harry looked at his shoes. "Did you," said Dumbledore, "have any part in this, Harry?" "Not really, sir. I just went along." "I," said Dumbledore. He looked at Harry's shoes. Harry's shoes did not look back. That was the 2nd year. There was the small business of the house elf, which Harry handled with one small Sharingan impression at a dinner party in Lucius Malfoy's London townhouse that Harry attended in the 2nd week of August as Draco's guest. Lucius was, in the engagement, gently shown the door by an 11-year-old he had assumed to be a small green-eyed novelty. Lucius's house elf was given, in passing, a sock. Lucius did not, that night, sleep well. He had had a small, unscheduled half-second on the back of Harry Potter's left iris, and he had seen in that half-second an image he could not afterward place, an image of his own father dying, and he had decided on the strength of the image that the Potter boy was not, in fact, a boy worth provoking. The 3rd year was the matter of Sirius Black. Sirius Black had broken out of a prison called Azkaban in the spring of Harry's 2nd year. He had broken out, by all accounts in the wizarding press, in order to come and kill Harry Potter. Madara, in his summer letter, was clear. "He is not coming to kill you. He was the friend of your father. He was named your godfather. He was imprisoned without trial 12 years ago for a crime he did not commit. The crime was committed by a man named Peter Pettigrew, whom we will, this year, locate and burn, and not in that order. Sirius Black is a man of 40 whose mind has been reduced by 12 years in Azkaban to about 60% of what it was. He is not a threat. He is a resource. He is, properly handled, an asset. He is, on paper, your guardian. He has not been able to be your guardian for 12 years. He will, by the end of your 3rd year, be your guardian on paper and in fact. You will not, in the meantime, harm him. You will, when he finds you, treat him with the dignity owed to a man your father loved. All right, there is additionally the matter of the Wisengamot. What about it? The Wisengamot, the High Council of the One Country's law, contains currently 4 members who were paid by Lucius Malfoy in 1981 to refuse Sirius Black his trial. They are Marcus Travers, Ophelia Greengrass, Edgar Selwyn, and Mortimer Tibbet. You will not, in the 3rd year, kill any of them. You will, however, visit them. The visits will be brief. The visits will be Tsukuyomi. You will, in the visits, impress on each of them, individually, the inadvisability of having voted as they did, and the prudence of voting for a retrial. The visits, in real time, will take 3 seconds each. The visits, in their experienced duration, will be 72 hours each. They will not afterward remember the visit consciously. They will, however, remember a single image. You will choose the image. The image in each case should be of their own grandchild. They have grandchildren, all 4, burning slowly on a small hill, while the grandchild looks at them and says in their own voice, "Vote for the trial." Is that not cruel? It is the smallest cruelty available that will produce the result. The alternative, if Sirius Black is not freed, is that he is recaptured and dies in Azkaban or kissed by a Dementor in a corridor at the school. I have weighed the cruelties. This is the lesser. Do you accept the weighing? Yes. Why? Because I trust your weighing. That is not sufficient. Weigh it yourself. Harry weighed it. It took him 3 nights at the flat in Russell Square. He weighed it against the goat. He weighed it against the cupboard. He weighed it against his mother's red hair on the paper in the clearing. He weighed it particularly against the small Weasley girl asleep on the tile. He weighed. "It is," he said at the end of the 3rd night in a letter to Madara, the Lesser. "I accept." Good. He did it. He did it in October over a period of 2 weeks at the residence of each Wisengamot member late at night while the Wisengamot members were sleeping. He did it without entering the houses. He sat across the street from each house in the small ring of dark a street lamp had agreed to make for him, and he reached with the Tsukuyomi into the sleeping skull of each member. He gave each of them their 72 hours. He was scrupulous about the image. He was scrupulous, in particular, about the use of the grandchild's voice. The grandchild's voice was the voice he had practiced at the flat in Russell Square, in a single afternoon, listening to recordings of small English children playing in the park outside. By the end of October, all 4 members of the Wisengamot, independently and at slightly different days, had filed a written request for the retrial of Sirius Black. The Daily Prophet ran the story on November the 3rd. The Minister for Magic, who was a man named Fudge, attempted to suppress the request. The request had 4 signatures. The 4 signatures were senior enough that Fudge could not, in fact, suppress them. Fudge sweated. The trial was held in camera on December the 21st. Sirius Black was at this point still on the run. He had not been brought in. He had been, by his own account, in the small communications he had been having with Harry by Sharingan dream over the last 3 weeks, sleeping in a cave on a Scottish hillside. The trial, in the absence of the defendant, proceeded on documentary evidence and the testimony of Remus Lupin, whom Harry had located in September and brought in a small ceremonial way into the operation. The trial was won. Sirius Black was, as of December the 22nd, a free man. He came down from the hillside. He came to a small inn in Hogsmeade. The inn had, at Harry's arrangement, a private room. In the private room, the man named Sirius Black met, for the first time since his godson had been a year old, his godson. Sirius was 40. Sirius looked 60. Sirius's hair was gray before it should have been. Sirius's hands shook in the way of a man whose nervous system had been reading a Dementor's gravitational field for 12 years. He sat opposite Harry. He looked at the boy. Harry looked at him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Sirius said very softly, "You have your mother's eyes." "I do. They are, excuse me, they are doing something." "They are, what?" "You will be told, not today. Eat your dinner first." Sirius ate. He ate 3 courses without speaking. He ate the way a man eats who has not had 3 courses in 12 years. Harry let him. He let in the silence the small Mangekyou hover at the edge of his iris, doing the slow read of the man across the table, taking in the eye record, the inventory. When the food was done, Harry said, "You are my godfather." "I am. You will be my guardian. The papers have been drawn up. They will be signed in the new year." "All right. You will not in the next 10 years ask me any of the questions you most want to ask. You will, however, ask me one of them now. Choose carefully." Sirius looked at him. Sirius took a long, careful 12 years in Azkaban breath. "Are you," he said, "all right?" It was, Harry noted, the right question. He let himself smile for the first time that year. It was a small, controlled smile, and it was, in the way of Mangekyou-trained smiles, genuine. "I am all right," he said. "Good, that was the only one I needed. Eat the rest of the bread, your body is hungry." Sirius ate the bread. That was the 3rd year. The Wisengamot did not afterward remember the dream. The grandchildren were unharmed. Pettigrew, located by the work that Harry had directed Remus Lupin in over the summer, had been driven into a small forest in France and was being watched, at all times, by an arrangement of dream watchers Harry had quietly set on him. Pettigrew did not yet know he was being watched. Pettigrew would not be killed yet. Pettigrew was being saved. He was being saved for the 4th year. In the headmaster's office on the last day of the 3rd year, Dumbledore looked at Harry over a pair of half-moon spectacles and said, "You have done, Harry, a remarkable amount this year. I confess I am not certain I understand all of it, sir. You appear also to have arranged, in concert with the Lupin household and Mr. Granger and Miss Granger and an unidentified solicitor's office in Edinburgh, the simultaneous reopening of the Black case, the relocation of Mr. Pettigrew, and the rehabilitation of Mr. Black's standing in the ministry." "Mr. Granger, sir," said Harry, "is Hermione's father. He runs a dental practice. He has been very helpful." Dumbledore looked at him. "A dental practice? Yes, I see. Is that a problem, sir?" "No, Harry, it is not a problem. It is a kind of work I had not perhaps anticipated being done at your age. I am fortunate in my advisors." "Yes, I am sure you are. Will you perhaps tell me about them?" "Hermione has been very helpful, sir." "Sirius he is recovering. Mr. Lupin he has been pleasant. I have not in the work used anything I have not been taught at this school." It was the 3rd lie of the conversation. The 3rd lie was, of all of them, the most carefully tuned. He had used a great deal he had not been taught at the school. He had, however, used nothing the school could detect. Dumbledore looked at him for a long moment. "You are," Dumbledore said, "either a remarkable young man, Harry, or you are something more interesting than a remarkable young man. I am not certain yet which. I am, however, watching." "I should hope so, sir." "Why?" "Because you are the headmaster, sir. It is your job." Dumbledore looked at him. Dumbledore, for the first time in a long career, was not certain whether to laugh. He did not laugh. He said, "Off you go, Harry." Harry went. In the corridor outside the office, he stopped very briefly by a window. He looked out the window. Below the window, on the grass of the courtyard, Sirius Black, recently freed, was walking with Remus Lupin and Hermione Granger and Hermione Granger's small bushy-haired father, who had come up by train for the closing day, and the small group was laughing, and the laughing was a sound that the corridor of the school had not in recent memory been audible from this exact window. Harry watched them. The 3rd tomo in each eye, on the back of the iris, kept the moment. He kept it for later. On the mountain, 2 weeks later, Madara, reading the record from his apprentice while the apprentice sat on the step with rice in his lap, made the small, low sound in his throat for the second time in 2 years. Acceptable, he said. Continue. Chapter 6. The tournament. The 4th year was the year of the cup. The cup, properly the Goblet of Fire, was an artifact of magical jurisprudence from the 14th century. The cup did 3 things. It selected from a pool of submitted names 3 champions. It bound the 3 champions to a contract. It punished, with a particular and ancient form of magical penalty, any champion who did not, having been selected, attempt the tasks. The cup had been set up in the Great Hall at Hogwarts in the 4th week of October. Harry, looking at it, found it stupid. He had been on the mountain. He had been across the Wand Country with Madara's letters in his coat. He had been by then at the edge of his second Mangekyou Sharingan manifestation in the wash house. He had been at the center of a chamber with a basilisk that he had taken apart in 2 seconds. He looked at the Goblet of Fire and saw, in his 3rd tomo, a small wooden cup with a moderate enchantment in it that had been set up by an enemy. The cup had, that morning, been adjusted. The signature of the adjustment was on Barty Crouch the Elder's hand. Crouch the Elder had not, however, been the one to actually touch the cup. The actual touching had been done 3 weeks earlier by Crouch the Younger, who had been thought to be dead and was not, and was at this moment walking around the school disguised by poorly maintained Polyjuice protocol as the new defense against the dark arts teacher Alastor Moody. The real Moody was in a trunk in Moody's office. Harry had been aware of this since the night before the welcoming feast. He had not yet acted on it. He had not yet acted on it because Madara, in his September letter, had said, "Crouch the Younger is being used by Voldemort." Voldemort is, at the moment, weak, a small homunculus held in a single house in Albania, sustained by snake venom and unicorn blood. He has been planning for 2 years a ritual that will return him to full body. The ritual requires 3 things: bone of the father, willingly given; flesh of the servant, willingly given; blood of the enemy, forcibly taken. You are the enemy, you are the blood. He has chosen, as the moment of the blood taking, the 3rd task of the tournament. Your name will be put in the goblet, you will appear to compete. You will, in the 3rd task, be transported to a graveyard. You will, in the graveyard, be taken. You will, in the taking, kill him for the 2nd time. You will, this time, be more thorough. You want me to compete. I want you to appear to compete. I want you to do the work. The doing of the work is the part of you the Wand Country will see. I want the doing of the work to be the doing of an unyielding 14-year-old who is, at the level the Wand Country can read, extraordinary. I do not want them to see the eye. You will, in the tasks, restrict yourself to ordinary methods. The eye will be used only in the graveyard. The eye will be used in a particular order. I will instruct. All right, there is one further matter. Yes. There is a boy named Cedric Diggory who will be selected by the Goblet as the Hogwarts champion. He will, by the protocols of the 3rd task, be transported with you to the graveyard. He will, in the version of events Voldemort has scripted, be killed at the moment of arrival as a small ceremonial irrelevance. He is, in plain English, the spare. We will not let him be the spare. We will not, in particular, let him be killed by Pettigrew, who will be the one performing the ceremony. You will, in the moment of the arrival in the graveyard, burn Pettigrew before Pettigrew can complete the killing curse. Cedric will live. We will also then complete our long-running business with Pettigrew. Are you clear? Yes. How many seconds do you have? From arrival to the curse, 3 seconds plus the wand draw. Less 2, practice. He practiced in the wash house for the next 3 weeks. He practiced the arrival sensation, the disorientation of a portkey landing, and he practiced, against the disorientation, the maintenance of the Sharingan lock on a target whose location was known in advance. He practiced, in particular, the throwing of the Amaterasu at a moving man who was, in the milliseconds, raising a wand in the standard motion of the killing curse. He practiced the throwing in such a way that the fire would arrive on the man's wand hand, and the wand hand alone, and the man's torso would be left intact for the further work that Madara had specified for it. He went back to the school. The Goblet, on the night of selection, picked Cedric, picked Crumb, picked Delacour, and then, after a small unscheduled silence that the hall had not anticipated, picked Harry. The hall hissed. Harry stood up. He walked in the way of a boy who had been told to walk this way, to the small antechamber. He listened in the small antechamber to the heads of the schools shouting at each other in 3 languages. He let them shout. He said only, "I did not put my name in." It was technically true. The first task was a dragon. The dragon was, in the prepared lottery, a Hungarian horntail. Harry had been told 3 nights before by Hagrid, who had been led there by Madara's quiet manipulation of Hagrid's evening route. Harry had not, in the 3 nights, prepared anything elaborate. He had prepared instead a small, ordinary 14-year-old's plan involving a broomstick and a feint. The plan was the smallest possible plan that would produce the result. The plan was also, by Madara's instruction, deliberately a little clumsy. Harry was to look in the task like a brave, competent, slightly lucky 14-year-old. He was not to look like an apprentice. He executed the plan. He flew. He took the egg. He let the dragon scorch his sleeve. He landed. He limped slightly for an extra 10 seconds because the limp was the kind of thing the cameras would print. The hall cheered. He took the points. In the stand, Sirius Black in disguise as a small black dog watched and barked once in approval. Remus Lupin, next to the small black dog, smiled. Mad-Eye Moody, who was Crouch the Younger, congratulated him at length with significant eye contact in the corridor outside the champion's tent. Harry let him. He did not, in the moment, return the eye contact at the level it had been offered. He gave Crouch the Younger a small, embarrassed, 14-year-old's grin, and he passed the corridor, and he filed the eye contact, and he kept walking. Crouch the Younger, behind him, did not know that in the eye contact he had been read end to end. His polyjuice supply had been mapped. His routine had been timed. His master's location in Albania had been read off his pulse. The cost of all of this was 1/10 of a second on Harry's iris and a small headache that night. The second task was the lake. The lake had on its floor the things each champion would miss the most. For Crumb, this was a girl. For Delacour, a little sister. For Cedric, a girl. For Harry, the cup had not properly been able to identify what Harry would miss the most. The cup had spent 30 seconds on the question. The cup had, Harry could read in the cup's own modest enchantment, initially attempted to put Ronald Weasley on the floor of the lake. Ronald had refused somehow. The cup had then attempted to put Sirius Black there. Sirius had also refused because Sirius was not properly the thing Harry would most miss. The cup had in the end settled with a small audible hum that no one but Harry heard on a different option. The option was, on the floor of the lake, a small bronze koi. The koi was, Harry knew, the koi that had lived in the pond at the wash house on the mountain and that had died of old age in 1979. The cup had read his coils. He went down, he retrieved the koi, he came back up. The judges did not on the surface understand. They saw a small fish in his hand. They saw the small fish flap. They saw him release it back into the lake. They scored him second. Madara in his next letter made the small low sound by post. The third task was the maze. The maze was the maze. The maze was the maze until it was not. Inside the maze, at the center, the Triwizard Cup was waiting on a small pedestal. The cup had been adjusted. Harry had known the adjustment was coming since the first week of June, and he had been preparing the graveyard in his head since then. He had also in the last week made a decision. The decision was to bring Cedric to the cup with him. The decision had not been ordered by Madara. The decision had been a small extension of the principle Madara had laid down in the September letter. The principle was the spare lives. The extension was the spare does not additionally walk into a graveyard alone and disoriented. The extension was I will walk in with him. He executed. He executed in the maze by, several times, helping Cedric, a flick of a stunner here, a small sharing and misdirection on a sphinx there, an unspoken indication to Cedric that the next intersection went left, not right, and by arranging at the final convergence in front of the cup, that the two of them arrived at the pedestal together. Cedric as a Hufflepuff said together. Harry as Harry said together. They touched the cup. The portkey took. They arrived in the graveyard. The graveyard was the graveyard of Little Hangleton. The graveyard was full of fog. In the fog, against a high stone monument with the name Riddle on it, was a small, hooded figure carrying a bundle. The bundle was, by Harry's chakra sense, a small homunculus the size and shape of an unhappy infant. The bundle had inside it the remaining living chakra of Tom Riddle. The hooded figure was Pettigrew. Pettigrew had in the bundle set the bundle down and was, in the moment of Harry and Cedric's arrival, beginning to raise his wand to point at Cedric. Pettigrew had been told that the wand was to be raised at the spare. Pettigrew had been told the spare's name was Cedric. Pettigrew had not, by Harry's pre-task reading, fully internalized the instruction. Pettigrew had been visibly nervous about it. Pettigrew had 2 seconds by Harry's pre-rehearsed plan. He used 4 of them. Harry, in the moment of landing, did not stagger. He had practiced the landing. He had practiced it 40 times. He landed at a half-crouch with the wand drawn and the Mangekyou already on. The Mangekyou had been turned on the half-second before the portkey took, so that the disorientation of the portkey would not have to be processed by the eye after activation. The eye was, by the time his feet hit grass, on. He did not bother with the wand flourish. The wand flourish was for after. He thought the word on the back of his left iris. Amaterasu. The black flame appeared on Pettigrew's wand hand. The flame did on Pettigrew what the flame did. It ate the hand. It ate then the arm. It ate then the chest. Pettigrew screamed. The scream was the scream of a man who had for 13 years been waiting for something exactly like this without knowing it. Pettigrew's scream was, in fact, Harry noted in the small clinical part of his iris, almost relieved. The flame ate Pettigrew in 8 seconds. The bundle in front of the monument hissed. The bundle began with its small infant arms to crawl. Harry crossed the graveyard. Cedric behind him said, "Harry, what is that? What is happening? Stand still, Cedric. Do not touch the cup yet. Do not look at the bundle. Look at the wall. Read the inscriptions. Take notes." Notes? Yes. On what? On the inscriptions. They will be useful later. Cedric, who was a Hufflepuff, did as he was told. He turned. He read the inscriptions on the monument. He took, as instructed, notes in his head. Harry walked up to the bundle. The bundle hissed at him. "You Potter, you, yes. You, what have you become? That is the question, isn't it?" He picked up the bundle. The bundle was light. The bundle was the weight of a piece of bread. The bundle's chakra was small and concentrated, and Harry could see in the third tomo, organized into a particular pattern that had been organized, very long ago, by a man who had not understood what he was doing. He looked at the bundle for 1/2 second. He thought on the back of his right iris the other word, Tsukiyomi. He put the bundle inside its own remaining mind into the small white room with no door. He held it there. He held it there for what would in the bundle's experience be the entirety of the third task, 55 real-world minutes by Harry's plan, which was 40 subjective hours for the bundle, plus the additional time the bundle's mind, working alone, would generate for itself. He set the bundle down. The bundle did not move. It was externally asleep. Internally, it was in the white room. Harry walked back to Cedric. "Done reading?" "What? Yes, there is Tom Riddle Sr., his father, his grandparents. The dates suggest the house up on the hill was good. That is indeed useful information. Keep it. Do not tell Dumbledore unless I tell you to tell Dumbledore. You understand me, Cedric?" "I understand you, Harry." "Good." He looked at Cedric. Cedric was, for the first time in this story, looking at him in the way that an adult looks at another adult. He was 3 years older than Harry. He was 18 almost. He had been, until 5 minutes ago, the older boy in this story. He was now in the body of the older boy, the smaller one. "You will not," Harry said, "tell anyone what you have seen here. You burned a man. I burned a man. With, what was that fire?" "A fire of mine. Yours. Yes, you are 14. I am. Harry, what are you?" Harry looked at him. He had been told by Madara that this conversation would happen. Madara had not, however, prescribed an answer. Madara had said, "You will tell the boy what you wish him to know. He will keep the secret. He will keep it because on the night he is asked to keep it, you will look at him with your full eyes, and you will, in the looking, place into his mind a small, ineradicable understanding of what would happen to him if he did not. The understanding will not be a threat. The understanding will be a truth. The understanding will be, the secret is heavier than you. The boy will afterward carry the secret because the secret will weigh too much to be put down." Harry did this now. He looked at Cedric with both eyes. He did not in the looking threat. He let the boy see instead a small image of the goat on the mountain. Cedric did not in his conscious mind see the image. Cedric saw in the moment a particular green that he did not afterward have a vocabulary for. Cedric understood, however, in the way one understands such things, that the green meant, "This is heavier than you." "I am," said Harry, "the apprentice of a very old man who taught me how to do things you cannot do. I am additionally the boy who Voldemort tried to kill when I was a baby. I am the boy he tried to kill again here tonight. I am in particular the boy who killed him. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Good, now the cup will take us back. We will take Pettigrew's body back. Pettigrew's body, when it is examined, will be revealed to be a man long thought dead. Sirius Black has been vindicated twice over. The wizarding press will in the morning eat itself." "What about that?" He nodded at the bundle. "I have a use for it." All right, he did in fact have a use for it. He pocketed the bundle. He pocketed the bundle the way one pockets a piece of fruit. He carried in his other hand Pettigrew's small charred body. He took Cedric's wrist. They touched the cup. The portkey took. They arrived back at the maze. There was a roar. There was from the crowd the kind of roar that comes when the home champion appears intact with the cup. There was also in the next 2 seconds a sharper, smaller noise, the noise of the crowd realizing that the boy was carrying in his other hand a body, and that the body was a body, and that something was wrong with the body, and that the something was that the body had been on fire. The teachers came. Dumbledore came. Mad-Eye Moody, who was Crouch the Younger, came running across the field, and by Harry's careful prearrangement was met, 3 steps from Harry, by Severus Snape, who happened at exactly the moment of Crouch's running to have come out of the castle with a small flask of polyjuice antidote in his hand. Snape did not on the spot know why he had come out with the flask. He had been told to come out with the flask by a small note that had appeared in his own handwriting on his desk an hour ago. He had not by that hour been able to remember writing the note. He had decided, in the absence of memory, to act on the note anyway, because the handwriting was certainly his. The antidote applied to Moody's face worked. Moody became Crouch the Younger. The crowd screamed. Dumbledore took Crouch. Dumbledore took also the body of Pettigrew after a long, careful look at Harry that contained this time more questions than the previous looks had. Harry, he said. Sir, what Harry? He came back, sir. He had been working on a ritual. The ritual required my blood. He was here in the graveyard. He attempted the ritual. The ritual failed. Failed? Yes, sir. How? Harry looked at him. He let his green eyes be the eyes that did the talking. There was a fire, sir. A fire? Yes, sir. You said a fire. I must have, sir. I am not entirely clear on the details. It was confusing. Dumbledore looked at him. Dumbledore looked at Pettigrew. Dumbledore looked at Cedric Diggory, who was standing behind Harry slightly to the left and who was looking at his shoes. Dumbledore looked last at the bundle of charred robes that had been Pettigrew. I see, said Dumbledore. Yes, Harry, we will speak again. Sir, tomorrow in my office, after the medical wing, after your sleep. Tomorrow in my office, please. Yes, sir. He did not, however, go to the medical wing. He went instead, after dropping Cedric off and embracing Mr. Diggory, in the way the wizarding press needed to photograph him doing. And after permitting Hermione Granger and Ronald Weasley each a long hug and one small sharing and protected memory each of the previous 20 minutes, to a small dark place at the back of the Hogwarts grounds where there was, by his arrangement, a small black dog waiting. The dog said in Sirius's voice, Harry. Harry said, I'm all right. They are saying, Pettigrew, they are saying you brought him back. They are saying Peter is, he is dead, Sirius. He was on fire, he is dead. Sirius sat down on the grass in the form of a dog. He sat down on the grass and he was internally a man on the grass and he was crying. Harry sat with him. He sat with him for an hour. He did not in the hour tell Sirius about the bundle in his pocket. Sirius, by the end of the hour, was no longer crying. Sirius was instead looking at the moon. The moon was not yet full. Sirius said, Harry, yes, there is something about you that has changed. Yes, tell me. Not tonight. All right, soon. All right, Sirius, listen, I want you to do one thing for me. Anything. I want you to go in the morning to Mr. Diggory's house. I want you to ask Cedric very seriously in private if he wants you to take him to a particular man. He will know which man. He will say, yes, I want you to take him. To who? To Madara. Sirius looked at him. Who is Madara? You will meet him. He has in particular asked to meet you. He has asked to meet you for some time. The meeting was being deferred until certain conditions were fulfilled. Tonight the conditions have been fulfilled. What conditions? That Voldemort was again dead. That Pettigrew was also dead. That you finally were free. All of those conditions are, Harry, are they all true? Yes. Voldemort is dead again. Not yet. Tonight in the graveyard I did not tonight finish him. I caught him. I have him in my pocket. I will finish him properly with Madara this summer. The bit in the graveyard was the setup. Sirius looked at his godson. He looked at his godson for a long, long time. You are 14, he said. I am. All right. I will take Cedric to Madara. Thank you. Will I be permitted to come back? Of course you are my godfather. You are also in his estimation an asset. His Madara's, will I like him? Harry thought about it. You will not in the first hour like him. You will in the second respect him. You will by the end of the first day owe him your life. The owing will be, well, we will see what you do with the owing. All right. Sirius licked Harry's hand in the dog way and then changed shape with a small audible pop and embraced him in the human way and then sat next to him in the grass in human form for another quarter of an hour looking at the moon. The bundle in Harry's pocket did not stir. It was inside the White Room. It had, by Harry's interior clock, 43 more subjective hours to spend in the White Room before it would be permitted to come out. He would not let it out in the White Room alone. He had a different room planned for the next part. The different room was on the mountain. He stood up. Sirius. Yes. I am going to see Dumbledore in the morning. Then I am going to take a train. The train will go to London. From London I will by my own way go to Japan. I will return in early August. I will return with Madara. I will also return in a sense Voldemort. Voldemort will be properly disposed of in front of the people who need to see him disposed of. Cedric, Mr. Diggory, Hermione's father, Remus, you, a small audience. We will do it once. We will do it in such a way that there can be, afterward, no question. All right, Harry, will you organize the audience? I will. Will you also in the meanwhile see if you cannot get the small Weasley girl to attend? She has earned a seat. I will. Good. He turned to walk back to the castle. Sirius behind him said, Harry. Yes, I love you. Harry stopped. He stood for a moment with his back to his godfather. He had been told by Madara that this sentence would happen at some point. He had been told that the sentence would, when it happened, be a small, significant calibration of his interior. He had been told to permit the calibration. He had been told not to flinch from it. He turned around. He looked at Sirius. He let on his face the small flicker of the boy who was, on the books, 14. "I love you too," he said. He said it also with the discipline of a man who had been taught to say true things in true voices. He had not in the 4 years on the mountain said the phrase before. He had practiced it twice in front of the small mirror in the wash house in the spring. He had not been sure if he meant it. He was sure on the grass behind Hogwarts in the moonlight with his godfather looking at him that he meant it. It was the first thing in 4 years he had been sure of in that particular way. The fourth tomo in each eye did not record the moment. The fourth tomo did not exist. There were 3 tomo, 1 Mangekyou. There was, however, in his chest, a small new sensation. The sensation was that the cold cat shape under his ribcage, the sleeping Susanoo, turned over. It did not wake, it rolled over. Harry felt the roll. He filed it. He walked back to the castle. Chapter 7, Susanoo. He went home. Home by the end of the 4th year was not a single place. It was a small triangle of places, the wash house on the mountain, the flat in Russell Square, and the small private sitting room in Sirius Black's restored townhouse at number 12, Grimmauld Place. He had, in the course of the previous year, spent enough nights in each that his body had developed 3 sleep postures, 1 for each. He went, this summer, to the mountain. He carried, in a small lacquered box Madara had sent him by an owl that had taken 6 weeks to get to England, the bundle. The bundle, by the time he arrived on the mountain, had been in the White Room for 38 days of subjective time. Harry had every morning briefly opened the small connection between his iris and the bundle's interior, and had observed that the bundle was in there still alive. The bundle had spent the first week of the White Room screaming. The second week alternating between screaming and lying still. The third week talking to itself. By the 5th week, the bundle had been entirely silent. The bundle had been internally planning. Harry let it plan. He had been told by Madara that in cases of long-duration tsukuyomi, the prisoner's planning was, in fact, the most useful information one could obtain about the prisoner. The plans, observed over time, told you the prisoner's priorities. The bundle's priorities, by the end of the 38 days, were in order. 1. Escape. 2. Revenge on Harry. 3. Revenge on Pettigrew, which Harry quietly registered as adorable given Pettigrew's status. 4. The recovery of a particular small object in Hogwarts that the bundle still believed was hidden where the bundle had left it. 5. The recovery of a small object in a cave on a coast. 6. The recovery of a small object in a vault under London. 7. The recovery of a small object in an old empty house. And 8. The cultivation of a snake. The bundle, in particular, kept returning, in the long silences of the room, to the snake. Harry had been compiling, item by item, the list. The list was the list of Horcruxes. The list was in the bundle's own articulation of it inside its head, articulated to itself repeatedly as a kind of pacing, what Harry had been needing to know for 4 years. He arrived on the mount. He set the box down in front of Madara. Madara looked at the box. It has been in the room for some time. Yes, what has it given you? All of them. All but one I already knew about. The one in your forehead, yes, Madara nodded. We will deal with the forehead in the work tonight, he said. We will deal with the box in the work tonight. We will then in August deal with the small objects on the list, one by one with Sirius. Cedric, by the way, has been here for 3 weeks. Has he? Yes. How is he? He is on the eastern slope. What is he doing on the eastern slope? Asking the thing on it some questions. The thing is answering. The boy is in his particular Hufflepuff way more useful for the questions than I had anticipated. He has in particular asked the thing where its sister is. Where is its sister? It does not know. It would, however, like to know. We will in time see if we can find out. That is, however, a matter for another decade. All right, eat your rice. The work is tonight. He ate his rice. That evening Madara took him with the box to a place on the mountain Harry had not in the previous 5 years been taken. The place was a small flat stone at the head of a waterfall on the western slope. The waterfall fell into a pool. The pool by the chakra sense was bottomless in a way that was not strictly to do with the depth of the water. He had been there on the mountain for 5 years and he had not seen this place. He noted that he had not seen it. He noted in his interior accounting that Madara had been saving the place. This, Madara said, is the place I have used 3 times in the previous century for the work of severing a soul from its container. Twice the severings were souls of my own. Once of a friend's. We will tonight sever the soul fragment from your forehead and the soul of the larger Voldemort from the bundle in the box. We will not tonight kill Voldemort. We will, however, fragment him further. We will set the fragments down. We will then, in the next 4 weeks, retrieve the remaining 7 Horcruxes, and we will, on the 7th of August, in the presence of the audience Sirius is assembling, end him. All right, sit. He sat on the flat stone. Madara sat opposite him. Ox was between them. The waterfall was loud, but not in the place they were sitting distractingly, so the waterfall's sound was here a privacy. Madara took the lid off the box. The bundle inside the box hissed. The bundle hissed in the small infant-shaped lipless voice of Tom Riddle. Madara, said the bundle. Madara Uchiha, I know your name. Yes, said Madara. You were a name I was told by Slughorn when I was a boy at the school. Slughorn knew very little. Be quiet. You did this to me. My apprentice did this to you. I supervised. Be quiet. The bundle was briefly quiet. Madara made a hand seal Harry had not in 5 years seen him make. The seal was a particular one. The seal Harry could read on the third tomo was a binding seal of the kind he had been taught in theory in the second year. He had not in 5 years seen Madara use one. He had assumed Madara did not need them. The seal landed on the bundle. The bundle stilled. The bundle's small mouth could no longer move. Now, said Madara, the soul fragment in your forehead, apprentice. Yes, lie down. Harry lay down. He lay down on the flat stone. The stone was cold. The waterfall beside him was the only sound. Madara, kneeling at his head, placed 2 fingers over the lightning-shaped scar. This will hurt. All right. More than the clearing on the eastern slope. All right, look at me. Harry looked at him. Madara's eyes, both of them, were the full Mangekyou, the version Madara had had for 91 years, the pattern that in Madara's country had been known by a single careful name. The Mangekyou met the Mangekyou. What followed lasted in real time 6 minutes. In Harry's experience, it lasted somewhat longer. It was the second worst experience of his life. It was second worst because the first worst was still, by his interior measure, the death of his parents in the clearing on the eastern slope. The second worst was the slow, methodical, technically perfect extraction of a piece of a man's soul that had been sewn into his coils for 13 years. By the end of the 6 minutes, Madara was holding in his hand a small black wisp of something. Harry was on the stone on his side, his head over the edge of the waterfall, vomiting into the pool. The pool accepted the vomit without comment. Madara waited until Harry had stopped vomiting. Then Madara took the small black wisp and dropped it into the box. The bundle inside the box hissed soundlessly and the small black wisp rejoined the bundle. Now, said Madara, you have a clean forehead. The scar will remain. It is by now a cosmetic feature. The signature is gone. All right, drink. Harry drank. Sleep. He slept. He slept for 16 hours. When he woke up, the lacquered box was beside him, sealed, and Madara was sitting on the step of the wash house drinking tea, and the sun was over the eastern slope, and Cedric Diggory was at the gate in a small clean gray training set the same as Harry's, sweating. Hello, Cedric. Hello, Harry. You are sweating. I have this morning run to the rock with the rope on it 11 times. I am, the man says, slow. You will be less slow by the end of the summer. I have been here 3 weeks. You will, the man says, take a great deal of work to bring up to speed. He has, however, told me that you are worth the work. He does not say so lightly. Cedric looked at the ground. It was in his face a small new pride. The pride was of the kind a Hufflepuff produces when, after years of being told he is, by virtue of his house, second-rate, an outside party of some authority informs him that he is, in fact, first-rate. Will I like you, have the eye? Yes, you may. Your coils are dense. You are not a wand bloodline as deep as mine. You may, however, with 11 years of work, manifest something resembling the first commas. We will not, in this matter, rush. How long did it take you? 18 months. Cedric blanched slightly. I am older than you were. Yes, you start later. It will take longer. We may compress. We will not, in your case, rush the eye. There are other techniques that suit you better on inspection. The man in particular thinks you have a, what is the phrase, a strong-shaped foundation. You will be a second student of jutsu of the third kind. We will see. All right, eat your rice, Cedric. All right. That month was a strange month. It was strange because it was, for the first time in 5 years, not just Harry on the mountain. There were now 2 students. Madara, who had been, by Harry's reading, expecting only one for the rest of his life, did not externally react to the doubling. Internally, Harry could read on the third tomo at breakfast a very small change. The change was that Madara every morning was slightly less tired than the morning before. Harry kept the observation. He did not, on this matter, say anything to Madara. He had been, in 5 years on the mountain, taught the discipline of not telling an old man about his small new pleasures. In late July they went back to England. They were a party of 7. Madara in a dark coat, Harry in a smaller dark coat, Cedric Diggory in a slightly different shade of dark coat. Sirius Black, recently restored to the size of a man. Remus Lupin, who had come for the journey. Hermione Granger, who had been told just enough to come and not enough to be alarmed. The small Weasley girl Ginny, who had been told nothing at all and who, on the train down from Manchester, sat opposite Harry and looked at him with the careful, watchful, slightly too old for her gaze of a child who has, in her last memory of him, been being carried up a stone pipe. They went by stages to a small, empty house in Wiltshire. The house had been chosen because it was empty. The house had been chosen also because it was, by Harry's mapping, at the geographic center of the 7 remaining Horcruxes, weighted by chakra density. In the cellar of the house, they set up. Setting up was an evening's work. There was a particular array of seals to draw on the floor. There was a particular candle to be lit at each cardinal point. There was an old phonograph brought down from the attic by Sirius, which Madara required to be set in a particular corner, for reasons he did not, on the night, explain. By midnight on the 6th of August they were ready. By midnight on the 6th of August also the 7 Horcruxes had been retrieved. The retrieval had been the work of the previous 4 weeks. The retrieval had been done in stages. The diadem in the school retrieved on a single July night by Harry alone, with a Sharingan guided walk through the room of requirement that had taken 11 seconds. The locket from a small cave on a coast, retrieved by Harry and Sirius together, with Sirius carrying the inferi that had been in the lake out of the water by hand and Harry, on a small ledge, taking the locket from a basin. The cup from the vault in London, retrieved by Hermione and Madara, in a small operation that had involved Madara briefly taking the form of a man, in a transformation Harry had not previously known he could perform. The ring from the old empty house retrieved by Cedric and Remus, the ring's curse defeated by small chakra isolation jutsu Madara had taught Cedric in the first week of August, which had in passing awakened in Cedric the first dim spark of his future ability. The snake, now genie, by the night of the 6th of August was in a glass tank in the cellar of the house, hissing, having been collected from a forest in Albania by Madara himself in a single afternoon. The 7 objects were laid on the floor of the cellar around the lacquered box. The audience sat on chairs against the walls. Sirius, Remus, Hermione, Cedric, Ginny. There was also in a corner a man Harry had not, until this moment, formally introduced, a small bushy-haired man in a tweed jacket who was Hermione's father and who had been brought into the operation at Harry's suggestion as the official witness for the wand country. Mr. Granger was not, by training, a wand user. He was a dentist. He was, however, an honest man. He had been chosen for the witnessing on the grounds of his honesty. He would, in the morning, tell the wand country what he had seen. The wand country would, on the strength of his honesty, believe. Madara stood at the head of the cellar. Harry stood at the head of the array. The lacquered box in the center of the array was opened. The bundle inside the box, for the first time in 30 subjective days plus the 4 weeks of real-world Tsukuyomi extension, was permitted fully to look out. The bundle screamed. It was a small, infant-shaped, lipless scream. It went on for some time. When it was finished, the bundle said, "Potter, you let me out of the room, you let me, and you have brought me to." The bundle saw then, around it, the 7 objects on the floor. The bundle saw then the snake in the tank. The bundle understood. The bundle began with its small infant arms to claw at the floor of the box. "Now," said Madara behind Harry. Harry raised his wand. He did not need the wand. The wand was, again, for the cover. The audience would in the morning describe the wand. The audience would not describe the eyes. The eyes had been, in Madara's preparation of the evening, hidden behind a small Sharingan genjutsu that would, in each audience member's recollection afterward, paint them, retroactively, as ordinary green. Even Mr. Granger, the dentist, would remember ordinary green. Even Hermione, who knew there was something more, would remember ordinary green and would, in her conscious mind, accept the ordinary green because the alternative was a complication she had been instructed, by the second Tomo at breakfast that morning, not to investigate too closely just yet. Harry breathed in. He breathed out. He thought on the back of his left iris the word, but not yet on the bundle. He thought it instead on the 7 objects. Amaterasu. The black flame appeared on each of them simultaneously. The flame on the diadem ate the diadem. The flame on the locket ate the locket. The flame on the cup ate the cup. The flame on the ring ate the ring. Flame on the snake. Madara, in a small auxiliary act, opened the lid of the tank, ate the snake. The flame on the diary by now, was a small charred lump that had been kept in a jar in Madara's office for the year, retrieved from the chamber long after Harry's second-year fire, ate the small charred lump. Each soul fragment, severed from its container, hung briefly in the air. The bundle in the box, sensing them, reached for them. The bundle's intent was clear. The bundle was trying to recover. Harry let it reach. He let on the back of his right iris the second word, Tsukuyomi. This time the room he made was a different room. It was not the small white room with no door. It was a room with the bundle in it and the 6 fragments in it, and the 6 fragments were arranged in the room around the bundle in a circle. The bundle was tied to a chair. The 6 fragments were each tied to chairs of their own. The bundle and the 6 fragments were made in the room to look at each other. The bundle and the fragments were made additionally to understand each other, to understand in particular that they were the same person, broken 7 ways, and that the breaking had been a single man's choice, and that the choice had, in the long run, produced this room. He held the room for 72 hours. In real time, 3 seconds. The bundle and the fragments in the room did to each other what 7 pieces of the same man do when they are made finally to be in the same room with each other for 3 days. It was not pleasant. It was. Harry kept the small note on the back of his iris, the most thorough confrontation a man has ever had with himself. At the end of the 72 subjective hours, the bundle and the fragments had, in the way a thing in such a room comes to a final understanding, come to a final understanding. The understanding was that the bundle and the fragments were, between them, no longer Voldemort. They were, in the absence of any further bodies, a small dispersed remnant of a man whose name had been Tom. The remnant in the room accepted itself. Harry released the room. In the cellar, the bundle and the box looked up at Harry one more time. The bundle's eyes were now ordinary brown. The red had gone out. The bundle said in a voice that did not anymore belong to Voldemort but to a small frightened boy of the kind Tom Riddle had at age 6 been. Please. Harry looked at the bundle. He thought about the cupboard, he thought about the goat, he thought about his mother's red hair on the paper in the clearing, he thought about his father at the foot of the stairs. He thought about Cedric behind him in the graveyard taking notes on a wall. He thought last about the small Weasley girl on the tile. He had been told by Madara that the discipline of the eye was the discipline of the not flinch. He had been told that mercy, like cruelty, was a tool, and the tool was useful only when applied at the right moment. He had been told that the wrong moment for mercy was the moment it would, by being applied, cancel the meaning of the cruelty that had preceded it. The cruelty in this story had been the cupboard. The cupboard had been Voldemort's more than the Dursleys. The Dursleys had been the cupboard's hand, and Voldemort had been the man whose hand the cupboard had been. The cupboard could not, at the end of this story, be cancelled. The bundle had to be ended, but the ending could be in itself a particular kind of mercy. He thought on the back of his left iris the word for the last time. Amaterasu. The black flame appeared on the bundle. The bundle did not scream this time. The bundle, looking up at Harry in its small brown eyes, accepted the flame. The flame ate the bundle. It ate, in particular, the small piece of soul that was, after all the fragmenting, all that was left. The fire went out. There was on the floor a small handful of ash. The room for the first time that night was silent. After a long moment, Sirius at the back of the room said very softly, Harry. Harry did not turn around. Yes. Is it done? It is done. All of it. All of it. The room let out collectively the breath the room had been holding. Hermione, who had been sitting next to her father, put her face in her hands. Ginny, who had been the smallest in the room, sat very still and watched the ash. She would, in 3 days, write a letter to Harry that began, simply, thank you, and contained, otherwise, no words at all. Cedric by the door was, for the first time since the graveyard, fully composed. Mr. Granger, the dentist, took out a small white handkerchief and patted his forehead with it. Remus stood up. Sirius stood up. Madara at the head of the cellar did not move. Then very quietly in Japanese, in a voice that did not carry beyond Harry's ear, acceptable, apprentice. Then, and this was the part Harry would, for the rest of his life, hold most carefully, more carefully than the goat, more carefully than the mother's red hair, more carefully even than the small Weasley girl on the tile, Madara, the man who had been alive for 116 years, who had outlived 4 of his own deaths, who had been the apprentice and the master in 2 countries. Who had taken him out of a cupboard on a night in 1986 when no one else in the world had known to come for him. Madara reached out his hand. Madara set it briefly on the top of Harry's head. The hand was light. The hand was in the moment the hand of an old man who has decided that the boy in front of him is, after all, the apprentice he had been waiting his second life for. The hand stayed there for 2 seconds, then it was gone. Madara turned. He walked to the cellar door. He paused at the door and said, without looking back, in English, in a voice that was meant to be heard by all the wand users in the cellar, Mr. Granger, you have witnessed the end of a particular man. You will, in the morning, tell your country. They will, in receiving the telling, attempt to question you on certain other matters. You will, on those matters, say only that you do not know. You will not be lying. You do not know, do you understand? Yes, said Mr. Granger. Sirius Black, you will also in the morning take the audience back to London. You will arrange with the minister the official termination. You will in particular ensure that the credit is given equally to the audience. None of you will in the credit mention my name. Yes, said Sirius. Hermione Granger, you will this autumn return to Hogwarts. You will in your final years occupy the 2nd slot in your year. The first slot will, by arrangement, be Mr. Weasley's. Mr. Weasley has been generous to you for 4 years. He has earned, this once, the top of the class. You will in compensation in 5 years become his employer. Is this acceptable? It is acceptable, said Hermione. Cedric Diggory, you will return to the mountain in 3 days. You will continue the work. Yes, Ginny Weasley, you will eat your breakfast and go to bed. You are 11. All right. Ginny said it without inflection. She was in fact 12. Madara, who had not had a small girl in his life since 1879, was given some leeway on the matter. Madara turned the last fraction of his head. He looked at Harry. My apprentice, you will in the morning take a walk by yourself. You will on the walk decide whether you will at the end of this summer return to the school. Well, that is not for me to decide. You have done the work for which I took you. You have done it ahead of schedule. You may now decide what the rest of you is for. The eye is yours, the mountain is yours, the country is yours, the country of England also in a manner that no other person currently alive understands is yours. You will in the morning walk and you will decide and you will tell me. I will accept what you decide. He left the cellar. Harry stood in the cellar for a long moment. The audience was looking at him. He looked at the ash. He looked at Hermione, at Sirius, at Remus, at Cedric, at Ginny, at Mr. Granger, at the empty doorway, at the room, at the candle at the western point, at the candle at the eastern point, at his own hands, which had, he noticed with a small clinical surprise, stopped shaking. He had thought when the work was done that the cat under his ribs would wake up. The cat had not. The cat the Susanoo had stretched in the cellar in the moments of the final fire. He had felt it stretch. It had briefly in the 3rd second of the Tsukuyomi room manifested around him the faintest possible outline of its skeleton, a single rib of chakra armor, the size of a small shadow around his right side. The audience by the genjutsu had not seen it. Madara had seen it. Madara with his hand on Harry's head had been making in the touch the small acknowledgement that the first rib had indeed come. The first rib was Susanoo. Susanoo was not in Harry's case the warrior. Susanoo would be the warrior. Susanoo was at the moment the skeleton. The skeleton would in time take on muscle. The muscle would in time take on armor. The armor would in time take on the great curved sword and the small leaf-shaped shield. Madara had had in his country the full Susanoo. The Susanoo had stood 30 meters tall. The Susanoo had been the color of an old bruise. Harry's would, when it came, be a different color. Harry could not in the cellar yet say what color. He could say only that the color would be his. He sat down on the floor of the cellar. He looked at the ash. After a while, Sirius came and sat next to him. Sirius did not speak. After a while, Hermione came and sat on the other side. Hermione also did not speak. After a while, Cedric leaned in the doorway and Remus sat against the wall, and Ginny, quietly, without saying anything, came and sat in front of him, cross-legged, the way Madara sat. Mr. Granger sat in the chair he had been sitting in. The candles at the 4 points burned themselves down. The cellar was, by the 3rd hour, dark. In the dark, in the small ring of his closest people, Harry decided. He decided in the way Madara had 6 years before on a doorstep in Surrey decided. He decided in the way an old man decides when he has been alive long enough to know that a decision is not the picking of one of two things. A decision is the abandonment of one of two things. A decision is what you let go of. He let go of the idea that he would, in his life, ever be a private man again. He kept everything else. In the morning, he took the walk. The walk took him, by no particular intention, up the side of the small hill behind the empty house. The hill had at its top a single tree. The tree was not as old as the tree by the wash house on the mountain. The tree was a working English oak of about 300 years, and it had been planted by a farmer's wife in the early 18th century, and her name was, by the small lichen script on the rock at its base, Margaret. He sat under the tree. He turned the Sharingan on for 10 minutes and looked at the country. He could see with the 3rd tomo in the open Mangekyou a great many things. He could see faintly the city of London to the southeast. He could see faintly the school to the far north. He could see much closer the small movement of a deer in a hedgerow 2 miles away. He could see in his own coils the cat under his ribcage, which had, after the night before, settled into a different posture, sleeping but lighter, half awake. He turned the eye off. He walked back down the hill. At the house on the step, Madara was sitting in the morning sun with a small cup of tea, and Cedric was sitting opposite him, drinking from a small cup of his own, and the two of them were laughing, Madara in his small, careful way, at something Cedric had just said. Harry stopped at the gate. He had not in 5 years seen Madara laugh. He watched it. He filed it. The 4th tomo again did not exist. The Mangekyou, however, did record it, in a particular subregister of the eye that was reserved for moments that did not, in their content, justify the full attention of the eye but that would, on later inspection, be returned to. He walked up to the step. He sat down on the other side of Cedric. Tea, Madara said. He poured Harry a cup. Harry took it. He drank. Well, apprentice. Harry looked over the tea at his teacher. He looked at Cedric. He looked at the house in which his godfather was, by chakra sense, just now waking. He looked at the hill on which the tree was. He looked in the small inner room of his mind at the place where the cat was. He looked at the small, very specific shape of the rest of his life. I will go back, he said. For the last 3 years, I will finish the school. I will, after the school, take a year on the mountain. I will then, after the year, go to wherever in the world has the next thing that needs to be done. You will by then have decided what that thing is. We will together do it. We will then come back to the mountain. We will keep coming back for as long as you wish to come back. When you wish to stop coming back, I will, for the last time, come without you. Do you accept? Madara looked at him for a long moment. He did not speak. He put his cup down on the step. He put his hand briefly again on the top of his apprentice's head. He left it there for the same 2 seconds. Acceptable, apprentice. Then, and this was the small private thing Harry would carry in the end, with even more care than the night before, more even than the hand on the head, Madara did, with the small lift of his cup and the small turn of his eye to the sun rising over the English hills, a thing he had not done before in the boy's presence. He smiled. It was not a large smile. It was not a smile that anyone, except an apprentice trained for 7 years to read his teacher's face, would have noticed. It was the smile of a man who had, after a very long time alone, finally in his second life found something worth the work. The sun came over the hill. The cat under Harry's ribs very slowly sat up. It did not yet stand. It would in time. The mountain in Japan, several thousand miles away, leaned very slightly toward the lamp. The lamp of its own accord lit. The end.